Okay, Madam Chair, we are streaming. You can begin.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Sandra Scholl. I am the chair of the Toronto Preservation Board. We have a quorum, and I'm now calling meeting 10 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council, all one word, live. So that's Toronto City Council Live after the / of youtube.com. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, Community Council would like to acknowledge, it's not Community Council, the Toronto Preservation Board would like to acknowledge that the land we were meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on my list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto Preservation Board link at hertpb@toronto.ca. Members, the city clerk has provided all agenda material. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. All agenda materials on toronto.ca/council. As a reminder, please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at hertpb@toronto.ca. Okay, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Okay, seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on September 12th, 2023, the shortest meeting in the history of the Toronto Preservation Board? Okay, anyone going to make a, Jeff? All those in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, so now we're going to run through the agenda. PB 10.1 is 570 to 576 Sherbourne Street and 37 Linden Street and 29 Linden Street. Notice of intention to designate a property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There is a staff report with recommendations, and there is also a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear the presentation. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so,
Yep.
Who's holding? Adam?
Yep.
Okay, so this item is held. Okay, the next item is PB 10, 55 Yeoman Road, inclusion on the Heritage Register. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it, I will hold it down. The next item is PB 10.3, 220 Cowan Avenue and 1313 Queen Street West, alterations to designated heritage properties. There is a staff report with recommendations, and there is also a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear the presentation. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and let me know.
Sandra, it's Adam again. Yes.
Okay.
This will help. Thank you.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah. The next item is PB 10.4, 137 Bond Street, alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are registered speakers on this item, so it will be held in the chair's name, being me. The next item is PB 10.5, 510 to 528 Yonge Street and 7 Bradall Bain Street, alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There is a staff report with recommendations, and there is also a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear the presentation. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know. Adam, you're holding it?
Yeah. And I think this is the last one I'll be holding, but thank you. Yes, I'll hold this item.
Okay. Okay, the next item is PB 10.6, 415 Broadview Avenue, alterations to and demolition of heritage attributes of a designated property. There is a staff report with recommendations, and there is also a staff presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear the presentation. Would anyone like to hold this item? Okay, can I have someone make a motion to adopt? Barbara, all in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, welcome, Counselor.
Sorry, I'm
It's
late.
nice to see
To be
you.
here.
Okay. Okay, the next item is PB 10.7, City's implementation of Bill 23. This is a staff presentation. I'll be holding it. And members, the next thing is you will have seen there's also a new item of business to introduce. The agenda item is listed on the website as PB 10.8, 3100 Weston Road, amending a listing statement. So Julia wrote it for me because I was still brain dead and jet lagged last week. And it's supposed to be on the screen. Anyways, you know what it is. Are there any questions about the motion to introduce this item? Okay, seeing none, can I ask all in favor for adding this item to the agenda? Okay, that's carried. And there are a number of speakers on this item. And the other thing to alert you to is we have not seen all the deputations that came in, all the written commentaries. So check your email throughout the meeting because there are over 50. Okay, so add it. So what I'm going to highly recommend is that we make the 10.7 presentation by staff on Bill 23 the last item and have the 10.8 before it so that we don't hold people up for what is essentially a staff presentation. So going back to item 10.1, 570 to 576 Sherburne Street and 37 Linden Street and 29 Linden Street, notice of intention to designate a property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Adam, I'm assuming you want to see the staff presentation?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so who's presenting on behalf of staff?
Good morning, everyone. It's Tamara Anson-Cartwright, the Program Manager for Policy and Research.
Thank you. Go
And
ahead.
I'm going to turn my video off. If you don't mind, I'm reading these notes, these speaking notes. Thank you.
Okay, because Tamara is speaking on behalf of Patrick Brown and other staff members. Go ahead.
Yes, so good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting this item, which is 570 to 576 Sherburne Street and 37 Linden. If people are wondering why those addresses go together, it's actually part of a complex. And then there's an independent property at 29 Linden Street. The next slide, the properties at are located on the southwest corner of Sherburne Street and Linden. The 572 to 576 and 37 Linden, formerly known as 578 Sherburne, were listed on the city's Heritage Register, or previously the inventory, in August 1976, while 570 Sherburne Street was listed in February of 2023. Staff have determined that the properties meet the provincial criteria regulation Ontario 906 prescribed for municipal designation, and under the categories of design, physical, and contextual. Furthermore, we've also determined the property at 576 Sherbourne has historical and associative value. Next slide, please. The properties were originally constructed by the City of Toronto alderman and land developer Edward Hewitt between 1888 and 1889 as a row of large brick-clad three-story attached house form properties or buildings, designed in a mix of the Richardson Romanesque and Queen Anne styles. The properties have the appearance of large houses that match the scale of the nearby mansions in Upper Jarvis area along Sherbourne Street, including James Cooper and Charles Goodrem, also known as the Selby Hotel, mansions immediately to the north. And together they define the character of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The properties are rare at 570 and 576, a rare example of a row of late 19th century row houses, designed to appear like the neighboring grand houses as homes, as I mentioned. They're also, of course, they meet the criteria as being representative of the examples of late Victorian residential architecture, being Queen Anne Revival and Richardson Romanesque. They share as evidence in the asymmetrical composition of their facades and shared defining architectural elements, including the decorative brickwork, the towers, a recessed entrance, framed by round arched brickways, and a combination of flat-headed and round arched and three-centered arched fenestration. The next slide, please. The property at 576 has historical value for its direct association with the acclaimed Toronto author Shirley Maisler, who owned the property from the 1940s until the 1990s. It was during this time, while residing at 576 and she also was operating a boarding house catering to artists and performers, that she wrote her most notable works. Moving on to the next slide. Together, the properties are important in defining and supporting and maintaining this predominant late 19th century residential character of the surrounding area. Best surrounding area by Sherbourne's, Selby, Huntley, and Isabella streets. It's also the properties are physically and functionally and visually historically connected to the surroundings of this area and are framed by the properties to the north, including the James Cooper Mansion on the northwest corner of the intersection of Sherbourne and Linden Streets. I'm going to ask now that we move on to the slides for 29 Linden. So for 29 Linden is located mid-block on the south side of Linden Street. It was listed earlier this year in February of 23 and has received a recent, as part of the recent, was listed as because we received an application for the proposed redevelopment of the property. As one will recall, that properties have to be on the register, the city's register, listed on the register in order to be designated if it's subject to development application. In this case, we have determined that 29 Linden Street has design and physical and contextual value. Moving to the next slide. Just making sure what slide I'm on. Yes, thank you. 29 Linden Street consists of a 2.5-story brick residential structure that was constructed in 1882, designed in the Second Empire style. The building features a mansard roof and contrasting buff and colored decorative brickwork. And it forms part of a larger collection of late 19th century residential structures located on Linden Street and in the area bound by Sherbourne, Selby, Huntley, and Isabella. We move to the next slide. It has design value, as I've noted, because of its brickwork and the features as noted before. And finally, moving to slide 9. As I noted before, it's important because of its supporting and maintaining the predominantly late 19th century character and of the area and the streetscape. And for this reason, the various properties, again, as mentioned, and as in this presentation and contained in the staff report, say that this property is recommended for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Adam, you held this. Do you have questions? We don't have any outside
Yep.
speakers.
Some questions and comments. I really want to commend staff for bringing forward the designation report for this property. As Tamara mentioned, there's a whole redevelopment application for that corner, and the applicant's pretty much proposing demolition of everything except that one corner building. So it's really great to see a designation moving forward, and I hope there may be some resolution to preserve more of those buildings. I'm wondering if any consideration was given for the building located between 29 and 37 Linden, 31, 33 Linden, particularly the west half of that building where the dichromatic brickwork is still visible. The other half has been altered over time. And then some broader questions about the Upper Jarvis area. I'm wondering if staff have considered doing a heritage survey of the neighborhood. It seems that we do have a number of independent designations coming forward for various sites as one of the most development-rich neighborhoods in the entire city of Toronto. And I'm also wondering if staff might be able to maybe expedite a meeting for the Upper Jarvis Committee, which is a city-led or city committee this pertaining to the policy overhaul or the planning overhaul for this area. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll speak first to the items relating to the report itself. Yes, we did look at the building between the 29 Linden and the corner complex of buildings, and we felt that it was lacking integrity, especially since it was a semi-detached, and also on closer examination, the brick itself on the western building, while a nice view of street view or even a staff photo make it more charming than what you see up close. It almost appears like it's the classic 1970s sandblasting. So I think every one of those bricks would have to be turned. So we believe that for the considerations for that, it did not merit further recommendation for those properties. The question of a larger one, well, thank you again for the kind comments. Question of the larger context. We are quite aware of this area having such a large, I wouldn't say large, maybe expansive effect on the area. And we're in coordination with community planning, but we're not doing it as a, say, for example, cultural heritage resource assessment. I think we're getting earlier enough indication, and then prior to your participation on the board, although I'm sure you had observed, we had also done the block further along Linden Street and Huntley, and looking at it again as a comprehensive review. And while Patrick was helping with this one in particular, the report, it is a team approach, and so the same team was looking, who had done that designation, series of designations, was also helping with the evaluation of this. So it is, but it's not publicly known how we do some of these things because they're coming very quickly now. And also we're, anyway, I think that adds enough. I know we have a full agenda today. So thank you very much for the good questions.
Thank you, Tamara. Just one brief follow-up question. Is sandblasting something that will impact the heritage potential of a building? That's the first I've heard of it being referenced in regards to heritage status.
I'm only saying that, Adam, specifically that the alterations would be significant in order to stabilize it. It's not about building condition.
Okay.
It is also, yeah. The decision was primarily because of that its companion building, a semi-detached, was significantly compromised.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, any discussion among us? Okay, seeing none, I have staff report with recommendations before me. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt? Barbara, all in favor? Okay, it's done. Carrie. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Robert also here. I'm afraid I joined the meeting late. I had some difficulty. I just want to be clear that I have a conflict on item PP 10.3.
10.3.
10.3.
Sorry, that's the 220 Cowan Avenue?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Matthew, can you record that, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair, we would need to know, Robert should state the nature of his interest in this.
I'm partner emeritus of DTAH, who are the architects for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Robert, I'll send you a form that you can fill out and write that out, and then we'll post that on there. And of course, you can absent yourself for the item.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now moving on to PB 10.2, 55 Yeomans Road, inclusion on the Heritage Register. Can we have the staff presentation first, please? And then we'll have our speakers, and then we'll have questions of staff.
Hi, my name is Gary Miedema. I am a project manager with Heritage Planning, and I will be presenting this report. I also want to recognize that the research was done by Cecilia Ninherdanez, Heritage Planner. Next slide, please. Located on the northeast corner of Danby Avenue and Yeomans Road, south of Shepherd Avenue West and west of Bathurst Street, the property at 55 Yeomans Road comprises a modernist style synagogue known as Beth David B'nai Israel Beth Am Synagogue, set on a large lot amidst a low-rise residential neighborhood in North York. The Beth David B'nai Israel Beth Am Synagogue was identified in the North York Modern Inventory completed by the North York Planning Department and adopted by North York Council in 1997. Next slide, please. The subject property has design value as a representative and unique example of a modernist synagogue with a high degree of artistic merit. Completed in 1959, the two-story prefabricated concrete structure is distinguished by its simple geometric form, intended to resemble a jewel box. The prefabricated concrete panels with stained glass openings define both the structure and the ornamentation of the building, fusing architecture and art through the abstract expression of traditional iconography, including repeating menorah motifs, the sacred wine goblet, the tree of life, and curved forms representing the cupped hands of the high priest. Next slide. David B'nai Israel Beth Am Synagogue holds historical value for its association with the Beth David congregation, which amalgamated with the B'nai Israel congregation in 1960 and with the Beth Am congregation in 1977. The Beth David B'nai Israel Beth Am Synagogue has associative value for its reflection of the work and ideas of the celebrated modernist Canadian architect Irving Grossman and nationally recognized artist Graham Cowtree, who collaborated together on the 1957 design of the synagogue. Finally, the subject property has contextual value as an architectural landmark in the local neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. We have three speakers here. Mr. Zinman, are the three of you speaking individually, or are you speaking on behalf of your colleagues? You disappeared on me. You were here 1 second ago.
Yes.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So are you speaking, or are all three of you speaking?
No, I'm the only one speaking for the three.
Okay, thank you and welcome. And you
Well,
have
thank you.
exactly 5 minutes and not a second more. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bram Zinman. I'm Vice President of House and Property for Beth David Synagogue. Along with us today is Sylvia Loka, she is our president, and Greg Tugg, who is our treasurer. Beth David's a registered owner of 55 Yeomans Road. We are an egalitarian conservative synagogue, which has occupied the property since the late 1950s. The synagogue building, which is the subject of the potential listing, was built for our congregation at that time, and we have occupied it to this day. Our property consists of two buildings that are attached. The first is the synagogue building, which you've seen, and the second building is attached to it and is leased to Montessori Jewish Day School, which runs a daycare program as part of their school. The school building is not included in the proposed Heritage Register listing. Beth David currently has a membership of about 650 members, roughly 2/3 couples, families, and 1/3 singles. Our leadership is all volunteer. We have only recently become aware of the intention of the City of Toronto to list our property in the Heritage Register. We are considering our future and looking at alternatives to remain viable, and we've had discussions with potential developers regarding potential uses of our property. These discussions are only at a very preliminary stage, and nothing can happen until we consult our members. The earliest we anticipate a membership vote is January, and we will require by law a 2/3 majority. Once the vote occurs, it will be at a minimum several months before any changes to our property can be made. We are requesting that this matter be deferred or adjourned to another date to allow our volunteer leadership to prepare, speak to planning and heritage consultants, understand our options, and be in touch with our members. As we have noted, there is no immediate changes to the property, and therefore we feel it is reasonable to request the postponement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zinman. Are there any questions of Mr. Zinman? Okay, thank you. We now turn to staff, and I'm going to ask the first question, which can a member of staff please explain to Mr. Zinman just briefly at this time what it means to list the property? Because I don't think it's quite as onerous as you think, Mr. Zinman. Who,
Hi.
Gary?
Yeah, hi, it's Gary. I'm back. And in fact, I had a good conversation with Mr. Zinman last week and explained all of this. And I think you were already very well informed, Mr. Zinman, but listing really only requires an owner to give 60 days notice of an intention to demolish in order to give the city the opportunity to evaluate the property for designation.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's a pretty special building. It's quite beautiful. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zinman. Thank you, Gary. Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you very much. Is this an opportunity for questions for staff?
We're just coming up to that. So, okay. Thank you, Mr. Zinman. Any questions of staff? And the councillor can start.
So through you, Madam Chair, to staff, I'm somewhat familiar of the decision-making process in synagogues. And if you think City Hall is complicated, try and get a congregation to get a 2/3 majority. It's like changing the Constitution. Now, there seems to be an urgency here, and I'm not sure why. The property still remains in the hands of Beth David. There's no application on file with our planning department to build there. The parcel is, I don't even think it's on the market for sale. Could you explain the urgency of this and why a deferral motion wouldn't be sort of a normal course of action in this case?
We bring properties forward for various reasons, as you know, Councillor, throughout the year. This one came to our attention and then was moved forward for listing. And generally, we move quickly for listing these days because of Bill 23, which just allows us to move something onto an agenda and to make sure that a property is listed prior to any need to designate. So that really is, I think, the urgency here.
So any kind of conditions, and they are minor at first. It's a 60-day notice for demolition, right? But are we agreed that you can't get a demolition permit unless you have full plans to redevelop that have to be approved by the city? You just can't demolish something and leave a vacant site.
I might defer here to someone else. I'm familiar with that for residential properties, but actually I'm less familiar for an institutional property. I see Councillor Perks nodding his head, yes.
So who from staff can help here? Is it Tamara?
Yes, I'm actually Councillor Pasternak through the chair, just going to, as again program manager, and was on the call the other day. I just want to set the context a little bit for us, which is that we're also it's less about demolition, because I know we're going to have meaningful and helpful conversations with the synagogue. It has always been our work with heritage planning and city planning. What brought this about was the what we're just generally as now as a requirement or a category under Bill 109 is that there are mandatory pre-application meetings. And it helps us as staff to not just state our own opinion of this has been a building that's been identified on the North York Modern Heritage Inventory for over 25 years. We felt that it was in our best interest, not only for the public interest, but also for the synagogue, that we were clear on did this property have cultural heritage value. And we felt it was in our best interest not to have it as a rushed item that we can do as a delegated authority to the chief planner, but rather to be one to which we could bring to the board to seek their advice as advice to council. So there isn't really, I would say, urgency. I think it's more being proactive to get some indication from this learned group and the advice to council. Does this meet the provincial criteria? Someone's speaking while I'm speaking. Oh, I think it was just Lucy. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of say that. And then the other, this is truly the advice of the preservation board, the matter and board itself. Councillor, I think you might know this, but not often coming to the board. The preservation board itself cannot do the deferral, but the matter will be before community council on October the 17th, and there's an opportunity there to have a further consideration and discussion whether to defer. Frankly, one of the things for us is also that we don't have the schedule for the Toronto Preservation Board meetings for January, so we're trying to get these items until we know where we're at. But it's in, we will be there at Community Council on the 17th, but we felt that this was the time that we could bring this forward. I hope that answers the question of timing specifically. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if I can squeeze in one more question here.
Okay, go ahead.
Should the lands be sold with the synagogue as is, but not as a functioning synagogue, what would be the obligations of the new owner of the building as far as can it be repurposed? Can it be converted to something else, an arts hub, a school? What is there flexibility in usage? Should the land be sold with this designation?
So again, this is just a listing, but certainly in the future, and we have many cases that come towards before this board and also to Community Council of adaptive reuse and the integration or continuing the active use and of a religious use. There are many combinations, and I would say that it doesn't limit one. It was only through the Planning Act that those processes and decisions will be made and the OPA. But otherwise, I would say that we have many examples of this of these types of buildings being adaptively reused. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave it for that. Do visitors get to speak, or?
Pardon?
Madam Chair, I'm asking a procedural question. Is there an opportunity to speak after questions for staff that are complete, or?
No. So are there any other questions from board members? Yes, well, Councillor Perks first. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understood something clearly. The decision on whether to list this property doesn't rest with us. We're just giving advice to, I guess in this instance, the North York Community Council, and the opportunity to defer or make some other decision rests there to staff.
That is correct. We're a citizens advisory
Yes.
board.
I just think it was helpful to be very explicit about that. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, Alex?
Perhaps mine is more of a comment than a question. I just wanted to draw your attention to the North York Community Preservation Panel's expression of support. We wrote a letter. And in addition to the contextual and architectural values, Eli also pointed out that North York has about 50% of the Jewish population of Toronto, yet at this point it has absolutely no synagogues listed, which I think is a bit remiss. So we are in support. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff by the board? Okay, any discussion among us? Okay, Paul?
Yes, I just wanted to make an editorial comment, and it may be obvious to some, but I think it's this addressing the sometimes concern about what is the point of listing. Listing is very important in transparency and in full disclosure. When we know that a property is out there which may have historical or community value, I think it's important to get those facts on the table, and that's what listing does. You know, the old principle that I've opined before about buyer beware, it may not be true in the case of a development property, but certainly in residential properties, when people are buying a property or considering buying a property, they do a certain amount of due diligence and research. And knowing that something is listed and therefore may have a heritage consideration to it, I think it's important to have that information on the table, not as a rumor or not as something that, you know, people are surprised about, but as a statement of fact and as a statement of the city's position. So I just think that one hears so often that people say, well, why does it have to be listed now? Why can't it be put off? Clearly, this property has merits as something that down the road we're going to have to discuss in terms of the heritage value of the property versus potential uses and potential suggestions for how the property might be redeveloped. So I just think it's absolutely constructive to have that in writing now on the register, and it doesn't change what discussions we'll have in the future. It's just there's no surprises, and we're being completely upfront about that. So a bit of an editorial, but I do think it's important to remind people who come to the board to understand that's why we're doing this.
That's very well put, Paul. Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Any other discussion among us? Kim, I see you way back there.
Yes, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, I just feel like I want to just add that Irving Grossman was such an important architect in the history of Toronto, and I'm so pleased to see this synagogue being listed. I think it's so important that we recognize the body of work of Toronto's own, and Irving Grossman's work all of it is worthy of designation. So I'm very happy to see this come up in today's meeting. That's all. I just wanted to recognize Irving Grossman.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Jeff? You're muted, Jeff. Jeff, you're still muted. We can't hear you. Nope. We can lip read. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, Jeff. Oh dear. Can you take off your headsets? That might be it. And is your mic on? Jeff, you're muted. Your name comes up muted. There, speak. Matthew, what's happening?
I'm not sure, Madam Chair. My suggestion is maybe for Jeff to leave the meeting and try to reconnect. We
Yeah.
were able to hear him earlier. Maybe just reconnecting will be able to reconnect that audio.
Okay. Jeff, can you leave and then come back? Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay. Assuming that Jeff had something positive to say, he was smiling. Matthew, can we go ahead with a vote? We have a big meeting.
Certainly, yes.
Okay, so has he reappeared yet? He's not waiting, is he?
It looks like Jeff has just reconnected.
Okay, let's just quickly, and then I'd like to give everyone a chance, but Jeff,
Hello?
speak now or forever hold your peace.
Hello?
Okay, we're gonna have to go ahead.
Hello?
Yes? Oh, that you? Jeff? Jeff?
Hello?
Yes, Jeff, your connection is poor, but it's you.
Am I being heard?
Now you are.
Okay. It's no.
Oh God, now he can't
What's
hear.
going on here? Yeah. Hello?
Yes?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Matthew?
Hello?
I don't know what's wrong. We
Well,
can
I would
hear
say
him,
what
but now we
the
can't.
inventory of modernist
Okay.
architecture in North York done by the city of North York before amalgamation in 1997. It's 25 years since that, and it's long overdue. There are a lot of properties that were moved into listing. Yeah. You.
Yeah, Jeff, your connection's very poor, but I think we get the overall gist of where you're going. I don't know who that is. Okay,
Hello?
Yes, Jeff. Okay, we're gonna have to go ahead. This is the worst it's ever been. So Jeff, turn on, if you can hear it all, turn on your screen. He's not going to be able to vote. He turned off his screen. Okay, we need to go ahead with the vote. Can I have a motion to adopt the report? Thank you, Alex. All in favor? Okay, we're adopted. Okay. The next item is PB 10.3 220 Cowan Avenue and 1313 Queen Street West, alterations to designated heritage properties. This is where we have to have Robert disappear, and I think he has. Okay. So can we have the staff presentation, please?
That's me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Portia Nazwini, a senior heritage planner with Heritage Planning, and I'm presenting item 10.3. I co-authored the report with my colleague Christian Flood, who is currently on parental leave. This report recommends approval of alterations proposed for the designated heritage properties at 220 Cowan Avenue and 1313 Queen Street West under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act in connection with a proposed development of the subject properties as part of the city-led Parkville Hub project. Next, please. Properties at 220 Cowan Avenue and 1313 Queen Street West are located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Queen Street West and Cowan Avenue. They are two of several properties comprising the Parkville Hub project. These two heritage properties are located within the Parkville Main Street Heritage Conservation District, which was approved by Council in July 2022 and is currently under appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The Queen and Cowan intersection has been the focal point of civic and community life since Parkville's early settlement. The north side of Queen Street West and the south side flanking the street have a fine-grained built form and Main Street character that primarily consists of continuous 2 to 3-story Main Street commercial rows and blocks. Next, please. The designated heritage property at 220 Cowan Avenue consists of the former Parkville Curling Club and Fire Hall number 18. The former Curling Club and Fire Hall will be retained as whole buildings with minor alterations to accommodate the new programming. The Mazari Cowan Community Recreation Center consists of these two buildings. The Parkville Curling Club, the former Curling Club, is a 2.5-story brick building designed in the Edwardian Mannerist interpretation of Jacobean Revival style by architects Darling and Pearson, and it was built in 1898. The Fire Hall is also a 2.5-story brick building and was designed in the Beaux-Arts style by architect R. McCollum, 1905. Next, please. The designated heritage property at 1313 Queen West consists of the former police station number 6. The former police station will be substantially returned as a whole building with minor alterations to proposed to ensure universal accessibility and to integrate the building into the new complex. The former police station is a 2-story Art Deco building, which was constructed in 1931-32 to the designs of the City Architect's Office and has a high degree of artistic merit. It was decommissioned as a police station in 1965, but thereafter continued to fulfill an integral role in the Parkville community as a site of emergency and low-income housing and as a Parkville Arts and Cultural Center. Next, please. As I mentioned earlier, the subject heritage properties are two of several properties comprising the Parkville Hub project. The Parkville Hub project is a strategic city building initiative that aims to revitalize and expand upon an existing cluster of city-owned facilities and community services located at Queen and Cowan, including the Toronto Public Library, the Parkville branch, and Mazari Cowan Community Center. As you can see in this slide, the Parkville Hub project involves 3 blocks: a west block, center block, and east block. The center block will accommodate the renovated Mazari Cowan Community Center and the Public Library branch. The proposed alterations to the subject heritage properties are associated with the development of the center block. The west and east blocks will deliver new rental homes as part of the city's Housing Now initiative and are adjacent to heritage properties but do not contain heritage properties. Parks, Forestry and Recreation, and the Toronto Public Library will jointly undertake the alterations to the subject heritage properties within the center block. Next, please. The subject heritage properties within the center block are proposed to be conserved and incorporated into a new 4-story building complex. The former curling club was substantially altered in 1985 to 87 when it was connected to the former fire hall to form Mazar Kavon Community Center, and only the primary facade is original. The former fire hall will be retained as a whole building with the side and rear walls to be internalized within the new construction and will be partially visible from the street through to the place additions. The former police station at 1313 Queen will be retained as a substantial portion of the whole building with the 2-story L-shaped portion of the building to be retained. And in addition, I have to mention that heritage planning staff have reviewed the proposals for the west and east blocks to ensure that the overall development, the proposed development conserve the adjacent heritage properties. However, the works proposed at those blocks, the east and west blocks, do not require approval under the Ontario Heritage Act. Next, please.
Thank you very much, Poria. There are no outside speakers on this. Adam, you held it. What are your questions?
Excuse me. Really great to see this report coming forward. I'm just wondering if staff have had an opportunity to review any of the interior elements of this building. They are city-owned properties. It's my understanding there may be some heritage features of interest on the interior. There's a safe in the basement left over from when it's a police station. There's also some wonderful wainscoting in the building that has been painted over, and just whether there's any of those interior elements that might be flagged within the report. I've also been asked to relay comments from the broader community that they would like to see an expanded history of the Parkdale Arts and Recreation Center and any, or the arts facility that's currently in that building. That's the first artscape mixed-use development in any forthcoming redevelopment. And there also are concerns regarding, in the report, there's mention of removing or relocating the Art Deco gate on the west side of the building. I'm wondering if you could provide a bit more comment about that. There's significant community concern that if that gate's removed, it will go into storage in perpetuity, and we won't know where it ends up.
Poria, can you answer those questions?
With respect to the interior elements, none of the interior elements have been identified as heritage attributes for the building at 1313 Queen, but we try to conserve the three-dimensional integrity and character of this building within the proposed development. And with respect to your second question about the gate, the iron gate, this is at this stage, we have reviewed the overall directions of the new proposal and its impact on the heritage properties. As part of a future site plan control application, all details will be reviewed. And as I mentioned in this report, we will try to find a location for the iron gateway within the future development. Or we can relocate it to somewhere else within this complex, but it hasn't been determined yet, but it will be explored as part of the future site plan control applications. And at this stage, we try to mitigate the impacts of the new development on the existing heritage buildings, and we try to fit this new development within the existing heritage context.
Okay, thank you. And just to confirm, staff did do a walkthrough of the interior of the building to determine if any of the interior elements are worth preserving, and that was the decision after an interior walkthrough?
The part for designation report was adopted by Council in May this year, 2023. And as part of this report, a detailed research was completed, and the heritage planning determined that on the heritage report identified only the exterior features of the building as heritage attributes, and as part of this alteration report under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, we try to conserve the identified heritage attributes. And
so I was there at that previous meeting, and at that time it was mentioned that staff would do a walkthrough of the interior elements, and I'm just wondering if that ever happened. It is a city-owned building, and it's a very important landmark within Parkdale, and we have community members that are flagging there are interior elements that they would like to see saved. I understand the challenges around universal accessibility, but it seems that perhaps some section of the building may not have had a walkthrough, or no walkthrough had happened. And I really respect all the work that Heritage Planning does on this file and the broader Parkdale and the entire City of Toronto files. I'm just worried about things that may be lost to demolition with this development.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. As I mentioned earlier, this is phase 3 of the Housing Now project, and an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment report will be presented to Planning and Housing Committee on October 26th. And this report is alteration on the Heritage Act. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a site plan control application in the future, and we can consider and we can develop a further research about the interior features, and we can consult on this with the community, and it will be reviewed as a future site plan application on it with all details that we require as part of the site plan control application.
Okay, thank you. I hope that there will be some examination of those interior features. And just one other comment, if there could be some direction provided to the city to repair the heritage clock outside this building. I note in the report it says it's been broken on and off since the 1940s. It was briefly functional again for a few years, but it's been non-functional for several years again, and it's a very prominent heritage feature within the community. So if anyone could give direction to have that fixed before this development, I think the development's at least a few years away, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, are there any discussion among us? Okay, I have a report before me with recommendations. But what, Matthew? What's up?
Madam, just a reminder, Robert has absented himself from this item.
Record the
We
vote.
should do a recorded vote. That's right. Thank you.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to adopt the report, please? Councillor Perks. Okay, now we'll do the recorded. Matthew, can you handle that, please?
Certainly. All in favor of adopting item PB 10.3? Start up at the top. Chair Sandra?
Yep.
I'll just use first names. Alex?
In favor?
Thank you. Kim? Is a yes.
In favor. In favor.
Okay. Barbara?
In favor.
Adam?
In favor of providing there's some closer examination of the interior elements. Thank you.
Adam, in favor or
That's
not?
in favor is correct.
Yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth, please.
In favor.
Paul?
In favor.
Matthew?
In favor.
Julia?
In favor.
Jeff, can we hear you?
I wrote to him to turn on his screen so he could at least vote, and he hasn't. So I'm not sure. I really don't know what's happening.
Okay. I've also sent him an email as well.
Okay.
Just at the time of this vote, I'll just ask again, Jeff, if you can hear us, if you can turn your camera on or give us your vote, yes or no. Okay, so I'll take from this moment that Jeff may be absent at this time, but Madam Chair, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members in favor, so that that carries unanimously.
You didn't call my vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Councillor.
Councillor Perks. Councillor Perks, how do you vote, please? That's
We must not take our councillors for granted. Okay.
Madam Chair, that's 10 in favor. Thank you.
Okay, you can tell Robert he can come back now. Okay, is he back? He is not back. Here he comes. Robert, we're only seeing the back of your head. Oh, there's some. Oh, so we're seeing the back of Jeff's head, maybe. I don't know. We're seeing the back of somebody's head. Anyways, Robert, you're muted, and we're so thrilled to have you back.
That is the front of my head, yes.
Okay, so somebody disappeared with only the back of their head. Doesn't matter. Let's go carry on. So now we're up to PB 10.4, 137 Bond Street. Alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. We have speakers and we have a staff presentation. So let's start with the staff presentation, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Georgia Cush. I'm the Senior Heritage Planner, and I'll be presenting this report recommending approval of the alterations to 137 Bond Street and requesting authority for a heritage easement agreement. Next, please. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of Bond and Gould Streets and is owned by the Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University. Next, please. This property was recently designated under Part 4 as meeting all three categories of design, associative, and contextual value. And what's interesting is that the house was originally constructed in 1855 in the Georgian style, and then it was later adapted to the Queen Anne style by its former owner, the prominent brewer and philanthropist Eugene O'Keeffe. The property also contains value for its association with the Toronto Metropolitan University, which has actually operated the building as a student residence for over 50 years. Next, please. Now, the proposed alterations to this property have been submitted in connection with a site plan application in support of a new student center for well-being. A full description of the alterations can be found in the Heritage Impact Assessment prepared by Evoke Architecture and in the staff report, but the major impacts include the following. So there is an 8-story rear addition proposed for the southeast corner of the site with generous setbacks, which is shown on the site plan here, which allows the heritage building to retain much of its 3-dimensional integrity. Next. Interventions to the primary west elevation will allow for barrier-free access at the ground floor level, transparency, and the occupancy of the 3rd floor. Next, please. A new contemporary entrance will be added to the north wall within an existing window opening for a new access portal from Gould Street. And there will also be a change proposed for the dormer, the 3rd floor dormer for occupancy. And this actually is the primary facade. Next, please. The rear portion of the east side wall, mostly not visible from the street, will be removed and replaced with new construction. The front portion of that wall will remain. Overall, staff support the application as meeting the intent of all municipal and provincial heritage policies, as the majority of the property's heritage attributes will be conserved. The new elements will complement the building's attributes and heritage character without overwhelming it. And the property will be rehabilitated for continued educational uses, which is in keeping with the associative value with TMU. As is customary, staff are recommending the submission of a conservation plan, as well as interpretation, lighting, landscape plans, and that the owner enter into a heritage easement agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Before we ask staff any questions, we have 2 speakers, Dima Cook and Nick DeCeleberry. Dima, you're there? Aye.
Hello.
5 minutes.
I'm not actually speaking. I'm just attending to answer questions if there are any from staff or from the city on the development.
Okay, fine. And what about Nick?
Good morning, everyone. Similar to Dima Cook, I'm here available to answer questions if there are any regarding TMU's intentions for the property.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have Dima Cook from Evoke, who is the heritage architect. And Nick, what is your role at TMU? You're muted. Yeah, you're good.
I am the Director of Planning and Development for the university. I work in the Facilities Management Department, and I work closely with Dima Cook on a campus heritage plan as well.
Okay, super. Do we have any questions from the board to either Dima or Nick? Well, aren't you lucky? So I don't see any. So this is your one and only chance before we go to staff. Speak now or forever hold your breath. Okay, None. Thank you very much. And now we move on to questions of staff. Adam, you held this. What are your questions?
Yes, thank you. Could you please elaborate on the alterations to the dormer? There's a sleeping porch up there right now. Is that going to be enclosed? And then also regarding the entrances, it looks like in Harry Potterini's proposal, the entrance facing Bond Street will be removed or lowered to ground level, and that new entrance will be created on Gold Street. Was there ever historically an entrance on Gold Street? And just a side remark, I also encourage staff to do a heritage survey of Bond Street. It's a really eclectic streetscape, largely owned by TMU. It's a mix of buildings from the 1850s through to the present day, and it's a mix of typologies, including ecclesiastical, industrial, residential. It's a really unique streetscape. Thank you.
So these are questions of staff?
Yeah, I
Yes.
just want to say, hi, good morning. Since we do
Hi,
have
Mary.
the benefit of the project architect, if you wouldn't mind, Adam, it might be more fruitful to ask Dima
Yes.
your questions.
For
That'd
sure.
be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Dima, you're back on.
Hi. Well, we're the conservation architects. There are two entrances being proposed to the building. So given the importance of Gould Street and the TMU sort of planning and campus master plan, a new entrance is being proposed on Gould Street so that the building can actually face Gould Street as well. And then the entrance on Bond is a very, I would say, discreet entrance given the nature and size of the house, even historically. So that entrance is being transformed to a design which, I guess it's like putting an enclosed porch on the whole length of the house, which unifies the new construction with the existing building and creates an accessible entrance for both. And just a question for the dormer is not being altered. It is remaining as is. On the oriel window at the front of the building is remaining as is.
Okay, thank you. And I agree, it is a very strange entrance to the building. It faces the back, and for a building with that style, it's very strange. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, any discussion among us? All right, I have a report before me to adopt. Robert, are you adopting and moving to adopt or have a question? You are muted. Robert, we can't hear you.
I wanted to
There
say
you go.
that it's good to see such a project where there's such a sensitive, from the details that we have in front of us, it seems to be a very sensitive intensification project, which is mostly lacking in what we've seen, certainly from the commercial developers. It looks extraordinarily well handled to me. And I think we should congratulate them on that.
So are you going to be the one that recommends that we adopt the report?
I will do that, yes.
Okie doke. Okay, all in favor? Okay, it is carried. Okay, next, it's PB 10.5, 510 to 528 Young Street and 7 Breadalbane Street, alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Adam, you held this again. Emma's starting up. Who's presenting?
Hi, it's Neil McKay, and I'll be presenting this item.
Okay, Neil.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm Neil McKay, and I'm presenting on agenda item PB 10.5 for 510 to 528 Young Street and 7 Breadalbane Street. Next slide. Staff recommends that City Council approve the alterations proposed for the designated heritage properties at 516 Young Street, including entrance address at 514 Young Street and 526 Young Street, including the entrance addresses at 528 Young Street and 7 Breadalbane Street under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that Council grant authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. The subject properties are located on the west side of Yonge Street at the southwest corner of Yonge Street and Breadalbane Street, 1 block south of Wellesley Street West. Next slide. The development site includes the following properties: 510 to 512 Yonge Street, 514 to 516 Yonge Street, 518, 520 Yonge Street, 522 to 524 Yonge Street, and 526, 528 Yonge Street, and 7 Breadalbane Street. 514 and 516 Yonge Street and 526, 528 Yonge Street are designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and 522, 524 Yonge Street is listed on the city's Heritage Register. Next slide. The subject properties are in an area of the Yonge Street corridor valued for its commercial Main Street character and small-scale mixed-use and commercial buildings. The property here at 514 and 516 Yonge Street contains a mid-block mixed-use commercial brick building constructed in 1876 to 1877, and it was altered in 1924, which retains its original scale, form, and massing as a 2 1/2 story building with mansard roof, along with architectural details from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The property represents the fine-grained mixed-use commercial building type along Yonge Street, north of College Street, in the late 19th century and mid-20th century. This property was listed on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register on March 10th, 2016, and was designated under the Ontario Heritage Act on December 15th, 2021. Next slide. The property at 526, 528 Yonge Street, including the 7 Breadalbane Street at the rear, is located at the southwest corner of Yonge and Breadalbane Streets. It contains a 2 1/2 story mixed-use commercial brick building, which was designed in the Second Empire style by the architects McCaw and Lennox, and constructed in 1881. The property also contains the 2-story coach house located on the south side of Breadalbane Street, built in 1884. The property is a representative example of the Second Empire architectural style that was popular in Toronto in the late 19th century. In recognition of its architectural significance, the building was amongst some of the earliest included on the City of Toronto's inventory of heritage properties, now the Heritage Register, on March 15th, 1974. The property was designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act on December 15th, 2021. Next slide. So the development application proposes a new 59-story mixed-use tower atop a 3-story podium. The podium of the proposed tower is built to the Yonge Street property line and involves the partial retention and restoration of the principal elevations of the heritage structures in situ while accommodating intensification. Along Breadalbane Street, the north elevation of 526, 528 Yonge Street will be retained in situ and incorporated into the podium. The proposed mixed-use building features at-grade retail uses with access to retail spaces from Yonge Street for all of the buildings from 510 to 528 Yonge Street. The residential entrance will be accessed from Breadalbane Street in the north, at the north elevation, with vehicular access and for loading and parking at the rear. The contemporary design of the podium infill on Yonge Street reinforces the 3-story datum line established by the primary east elevations of the heritage properties within the development site, as well as to adjacent heritage properties. Additionally, the ground floor retail uses along Yonge Street respect the historic context, therefore conserving the contextual value of the heritage buildings, as well as the fine-grained commercial Main Street character and street wall of this area of Yonge Street. Next slide. So the proposed tower is rectangular in plan and introduces setbacks, stepbacks, and design measures to respect the heritage setting. The tower is stepped back above the podium and the retained primary Yonge Street east elevation by a minimum of 10 meters from the street, and step back an additional 1.5 meters at the 16th story and at the 38th story. Above the podium, the tower is set back 5.12 meters from the north property line. And along the west property line, the tower is stepped back by 7.5 meters. Along the south property line, the tower is stepped back by 3 meters. At the rear of the retained heritage facade, the podium is set back 4 meters, creating a foreground to the residential entrance. The proposed step back of the tower above will offer three-dimensional legibility of the heritage building on the corner at 526, 528 Yonge Street. Next slide, please. The proposed conservation strategy in association with the development application will conserve attributes outlined in the designation bylaws for the heritage properties. The strategy proposes to retain and restore the east primary elevations of 514 Yonge Street and 526 Yonge Street and their architectural details. The strategy therefore conserves the heritage property's design and physical value as representative examples of the mixed-use commercial building typology from the late 19th and early 20th century, and contextual value as part of the late 19th century streetscape. The strategy proposes the retention or reconstruction of the north and south return walls of 514, 516 Yonge Street, as well as the south return wall of 522, 524 Yonge Street, to a depth to be determined through consultation with the structural engineer to maintain the three-dimensional quality of the heritage buildings. The rear addition of the mid-block 514, 516 Yonge Street is not visible from Yonge Street and doesn't contribute to the cultural heritage value of the property. And the removal of the rear addition will not impact the cultural heritage value of the on-site heritage resources. The rear coach house at 7 Breadalbane Street is proposed to be removed. However, it is not identified as a heritage attribute within the designation bylaw due to a lot in, I think, the mid-2000s, there was heavy alterations. The coach house has been heavily modified from its original design, and so the rear addition will not impact the cultural heritage value of on-site heritage resources. Unsympathetic alterations on the heritage buildings, such as the metal cladding at the mid-block 514, 516 Yonge Street, and paint finish on the existing brick and stone 526, 520 Yonge Street, are recommended to be removed as part of the conservation strategy. The heritage properties are identified as contributing in the historic Yonge Street HCD plan. Although the HCD plan is currently under appeal and not in force, the proposal conforms to the objectives of this plan. Next slide, please. Staff are of the opinion that the conservation strategy and mitigation measures proposed conserve the cultural heritage values, character, and attributes of the properties and are consistent with the policy framework. And this concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Neil. I think this is the first presentation you've made. Is that correct?
I've done a few with the Heritage Grant Program, and I've prepared a few reports, but due to vacations, I was unable to present them. So yes,
congratulations.
This is
first board presentation. Okay, Adam, do you have questions of staff?
Yes, thank you. Pertaining to the corner building, are there plans to restore the mansard roof? It's a very intricate mansard roof by a very prominent architectural firm to the historical materials. It currently has asphalt shingles. Historically, it had slate with the typical geometric patterning on the slate shingles, and as well as ornate metalworking. I was wondering if there's any plans to restore that onto the building. I don't see it in any of the renderings, nor is it included within kind of the written elements. I'm also wondering if anything's underneath the stucco on the adjacent building at 522, 524. I know there's been some discussion in the past about retention of that building, but it is covered with stucco, and I'm wondering what's underneath that. And it will be quite exciting to see the metal cladding removed from the other building on that block because it's been hidden for so many years. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So yeah, the conservation objectives of the proposed development will retain the principal elevations of the heritage properties in situ, and the conservation of the development site will conserve attributes outlined in the designation bylaws for the heritage properties. So the mansard roof, I don't believe that asphalt shingles are a part of this conservation strategy at this time, and yeah, they're not part of the designation bylaw, I don't believe. So I don't believe that those will be part of the conservation strategy.
So it will be restored back to a historically accurate mansard roof for that type of building. Elsewhere in the district, we've seen cases where a Second Empire building has been restored and they left the asphalt shingles on, and it looks very strange for a very intricate building to have that on it when it normally would have a more heritage. I'm going to use the term heritage texture to it. And do you know what's underneath the stucco on the adjacent building?
I'm unaware of what's underneath the stucco on the adjacent listed building, that mid-block building. But I do know that the like I said before, the conservation and the development site will conserve the attributes outlined in the statement of significance for that particular heritage property.
Okay. I'd just be curious to know if, for example, there's a brick building under there that the stucco could be removed, or maybe it's just a parapet with just stucco on it. I'm not quite certain about that one. And just one other very brief question: are there any plans to restore a 19th or early 20th century storefront design on this block? The current buildings have a contemporary storefront.
Yeah, the storefronts, reintroducing retail is planned for all of the buildings along Yonge Street, the primary east elevation, and I do believe that there is going to be in the upcoming conservation plan, there will be some reintroduction of historical storefronts for the heritage buildings. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Barbara, any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question on 522, 524, the one with the stucco front. Could you describe the rationale? It's a listed building, why you didn't proceed? I understand it's within the district and would be a part 5 if the district is finally ratified. But why you didn't proceed to designating this property as often we do in other projects?
Yeah, so the listed property at 522 Yonge Street has been subject to extensive alterations over time. And in the notice of intention to designate from October 27th, 2021, it was noted that many of the existing features of 522 Yonge Street, including its second floor window openings, curved parapet, and decorative cornices and molding, were added in renovations during the early 2000s, which has diminished the building's integrity. So there was research and additional analysis done, and it was decided that it did not meet the criteria for designation under OREG 906, and so it was not designated in 2021. So the building is proposed to be retained in situ as a listed building, and not as a designated building.
So if and when the HCD is approved, it will be considered as a contributing building and designated under Part 5. Is that the status it will have?
Correct, yes.
And so all of the renovations now, Adam had questions about the restoration of this building, but the decision was made to basically prettify it up, but not to do any restoration on it because of its status as a listed building.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Basically, the approach to the front facade of this building is being maintained. Were the decisions about its appearance, as it is shown in this rendering, made because it is a listed building rather than doing more exploration to do a restoration?
I'm not sure with regards to if more exploration could have been done with regards to this building and what's underneath the stucco facade. I will note that in September of 2022, the OLT issued a decision approving the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application for 510, 528 Yonge Street and 7 Broadway Street. So when I received this application, in terms of specific restorations and what the applicant was proposing, there wasn't much, but I could do. But we have specific restoration policies in the historic Yonge Street Heritage Conservation District plan that would speak to that. Yeah.
Information on the.
Can I just ask? So, as a contributing, its contributing feature within the plan, then, is its mass, its and its situation within this extent of buildings. Is that why it's considered contributing? Because it has been altered considerably.
I'm unsure of why it is considered contributing at this time.
Understanding is it's exactly
Michael,
as you said.
can you speak up a bit, Michael?
My understanding is exactly as you said, Barbara. It's the scale and the massing and just how it fits with the streetscape, but really as an individual element is not that significant.
Right, it's too far gone in terms of changes, but it does contribute with its massing and in the streetscape. Okay, that's fine. That answers my questions.
If I may add one other comment, I'm looking at a photograph of the site right now from 1914, and it does look like it was a 1.5-story building originally. So what one of the staff members said about that whole parapet being added, I do wonder if perhaps there's just nothing underneath that stucco. It could just be wood frame as a kind of a decorative element, but I don't want to say that for certain. But in this earlier photograph of the site, you can see the lower level was intact, but that whole upper section is it may have been added on. And I've just been curious about that building for some time, because in the various iterations of the proposal, it goes back and forth, whether it's retained or demolished, retained, demolished. So if there is something under there, maybe related, it'd be really great to have that investigated further. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, staff.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Julia, did you have something? No. Okay. Any discussion among us? Okay, I have a report before me with recommendations. Would somebody like to move to adopt? Is someone moving? Oh, Julia, good. All in favor? It's carried. Okay. So we've carried 415 Broadview Avenue, PB 10.6. So now we're going to move on to 10.8, which is the modification of the listing on at 3100 Weston Road. And there are a number of speakers. There have been a number of letters. Some more have come in throughout the meeting. And we appreciate the response. All that I ask is that the speakers, when they come forward, remember that they only have 5 minutes. And if you find that you're repeating the message, because clearly there's a lot of support for this project, we're aware of that. Perhaps, you could cut down what you have to say a little bit, because it's going to make the meeting much, much longer. But anyways, who is presenting on behalf of staff? Is this Gary?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you. Again, my name is Gary Miedema. I'm a project manager with Heritage Planning, and I want to recognize that once again, Cecilia Nin Hernandez, a Heritage Planner, contributed to this report through research. This report recommends that City Council adopt an amended listing statement for 3100 Weston Road to inform the property's cultural heritage value and interest, with new information that has arisen since the original listing was adopted by City of North York Council in 1997. Next slide, please. The property is located on the west side of Weston Road at the intersection of Weston Road and Shepherd Avenue West. And the property at 3100 Weston Road comprises a Tudor Revival estate home with garage and surrounding landscape set on a large lot that extends into the Humber River Valley. The subject property straddles the boundary of the Humbermead and Pelmo Park Humberley neighborhoods in Etobicoke York Community Council area. The house on the property was designed for stockbroker Percy Ryerson Gardner by architect Jocelyn Davidson, and the estate was named Rivermead. Over time, the property has evolved to include a red brick, modernist style former school and chapel building complex built for the Order of St. Basil the Great, which currently is the location of the Carmine Stefano Community Center. In 2005, the Marian Shrine of Gratitude was constructed in the rear gardens of the house. So to help you with this graphic, again, the arrow on top points to the school. The arrow below points to the former estate house. The property at 3100 Weston Road was included on the North York Inventory of Heritage Properties by North York Council on October 6, 1997. Following revisions to the Ontario Heritage Act in 2005, 3100 Weston Road and many other properties on pre-amalgamation municipal inventories were included on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register as listed properties on September 27, 2006. Following the sale of this property in August 2023, staff have reviewed the listing statement from 1997 and have determined that the property continues to meet criteria related to design, historical association, and context as adopted by the former North York Council. Given new information about the site that has arisen since 1997, however, staff have amended the listing statement, dated October 2023, to reflect the values of the property more comprehensively. There's a long introduction. Next slide. Subject property, once known as Rivermead, has design value as a representative example of a Tudor Revival estate home with a high degree of artistic merit. The property includes a terraced rear garden with stone walls and swimming pool now filled in, overlooking the Humber Valley. Next slide, please. The property has historical associative value for reflecting the work and ideas of the talented Canadian architect Jocelyn Davidson. Rivermead is also associated with the prominent Gardner and Crang families of Toronto. The property also holds historical value for its association with the Order of St. Basil the Great, which acquired the property in the late 1950s and over time used it for various purposes, including a monastery, a private boarding school for boys, and a co-ed private high school. In 2005, the Marian Shrine of Gratitude was created in the rear gardens and became an important site of spiritual meaning, as well as a space for peaceful reflection and solace in the community. The subject property has contextual value as well as an architectural and community landmark in Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, before we ask any questions of staff, we have to go to our speakers. And the first person I have on my list is Teresa Lubinsky, who is a trustee for the Toronto Catholic School Board. Teresa, are you here? Matthew?
Madam Chair, Teresa is connected. Looks
Teresa?
like there she is. I believe she's just turned her camera on here as well.
Okay. Is that you, Teresa? I hear nothing. Matthew?
I can see Teresa on camera. I'm not
Yes,
sure
I
if
can
Teresa
see
can
her
hear us.
as well. Teresa, I can see you, but we can't hear you. And she doesn't seem to be able to hear us.
Madam Chair, we'll reach out to Teresa maybe by email.
So shall I go on to Edith George next?
Yes, why don't we do that for
And we'll
now?
come back to Teresa.
Thanks.
Okay, Edith?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And you have 5 minutes maximum, please.
Madam Chair, I just want to hopefully share one photo before I begin.
Matthew?
As per Matthew. Oh, it's going to be too difficult. I'm going to back off. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Edith George, and I have lived in the vicinity of 3100 Western Road since 1960. The majority of the documents that you see included in this item have been researched and collected by myself for over 17 years. My passion has always been built and natural heritage, especially in the city of Toronto, where I was born, educated, worked, and lived. What pushed me to do this research was my fascination of who lived on the land where my neighborhood is located. Like a tree with branches, whenever I thought I had completed my findings, I would discover something else and go out on another branch to see what I could find. I will speak on what is not in these documents, but 2 personal discoveries I made on this journey that I was placed on. These are oral histories from speaking with my dad and his 3 sisters. These are my family's close connections with the Gardner and Crank families who owned Rivermead. Percy Gardner was the youngest of 6 children. 2 of his older brothers became doctors, and their last practices were found in Toronto. Dr. George Gardner's practice was located at 123 Annette Street in the Junction. My family came from Macedonia, Greece, and they settled in the Junction at 112 Mulock Avenue. Dr. George Gardner was their house doctor. When my dad was a young teenager, he became deathly ill, and Dr. Gardner was summoned to the house. He immediately discovered that my father's appendix had burst in his body. He got him into his vehicle, rushed him to the hospital, emergency surgery was performed, and my dad survived. A few years later, my Aunt Florence became ill, and Dr. Gardner came to the house, and he informed her parents that she had rheumatic fever, and it didn't look like she was going to make it. He wanted to try a new drug on her, and of course her parents gave him permission. My aunt survived. That new drug was penicillin. During World War II, my dad was sent overseas. My grandfather was responsible for his wife, parents, and 3 young daughters. To make additional money in the summer, he ran a hot dog hamburger unit at Oakwood Pool. The eatery was called Lou's Grill. He dealt with Jethro Krang's older brother, James Goulding Krang. Jethro Krang purchased Rivermead from Percy Gardner. James Krang was the manager of the Oakwood Pool, a Krang family property. This extra cash helped financially support the family while Dad was overseas. These are the contributions of the Gardner and Krang families to my family. Regardless of any frustrations that I had, and I had a lot of frustrations, this research project has been a pleasure and an honor. I'm very proud to be a Torontonian. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Edith. Are there any questions for Edith? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Edith, and we'll proceed to the next speaker. I can still see Teresa. Teresa, can you hear us now? She can't. She was on mute, but she's not, Matthew, so good.
We've also just sent Teresa the phone number to call in, and we'll see if that can help.
Okay, but in the meantime, let's go on to Ange Carboni.
Good day. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My name's Angela Carboni. I was blessed to be a tenant in the Carmen Stefano Community Center in 2000. And what I was doing there, I run a charity called St. Bernadette's Family Resource Center. And I rented 3 classrooms, and I provided a day program for 60 intellectually and physically challenged adults who it was their home for 18 years. And they enjoyed going out tobogganing, going into the park. And the shrine was a great part of our work and our day. Now, in 2003, I was blessed to host youth retreats and student retreats for children. So in a week, I would see anywhere between 300 to 500 children and youth. The highlight of the day, along with teaching them about our faith and having them meet all the beautiful people I serve, was the shrine. Many schools to this day, because I still do the youth retreats, are contacting me, asking me if the shrine, if I could ever go back, if I could ever visit them, bring the kids to the shrine. Many days it would rain, and when we would pray there, the sun would come out. I became very close to the Basilian Fathers right after the shrine was built, which was 2005 in May. And the kids were allowed to visit daily. So every day we had about 70, 80 youth, children pray there. And it was always a peaceful, beautiful experience. In October of 2005, I went to Lourdes, and I was inspired to go back and tell Father Basil and the Basilian Fathers that we should do processions. And we started doing processions in October 4th, 2005. Since then, it's been 18 years that I have been volunteering and doing processions. Now, Father Basil initiated the shrine because he had an accident while he was cleaning the garden, October 4th, 2004, and a twig perforated his retina. Before the accident, he wore 3 pairs of glasses, and his license needed glasses. Fortunately, by the grace of God, after he pierced his eyes, he was told he couldn't see anymore out of the eye. That evening, he began to see, and it healed abruptly. But the other beautiful thing was that he didn't need the 3 pairs of glasses anymore. In his gratitude for God's healing and Mother Mary's listening to his prayer, he made that beautiful garden. Every rose, every flower was an act of love. And I was part of being with him daily. And the beautiful thing that started happening is people started to be attracted to this gorgeous oasis. It was a little bit of heaven in the city. The grounds are breathtaking. There were wild animals coming up to us, like reindeer and foxes and little baby foxes and butterflies. People would just start gravitating. The more we prayed, the more the public started coming. But then beautiful things started happening. People would report healings, just like fathers. My mother had cancer when she was 85 years old, and this was in 2013. I brought my mother to Father. We prayed there. She was told it was definitely going to be a colostomy bag. Well, when she had this all done and taken care of, we were expecting radiation and chemo. The doctor said, congratulations, your cancer's gone. An assistant of mine who was not Catholic, he came because of the prayers that we would do monthly and weekly. He wanted to say goodbye to me. He was 32 years old. When Gary came, he wasn't even Christian. He was so moved by the peace and the beauty that was there. That night, he said, I want to give my life to God. And I said, okay, Gary. And we prayed together, and he went and he got blessed by Father Basil. And then he reported 3 months later, he had leukemia. An assistant of mine had endocrine cancer. There are endless people healing. And this is why there's almost 30,000 people crying out right now, because they have found healing. They have found peace. I've gotten immigrants calling me. My phone is like Grand Central Station.
Can you please wrap up? Sorry, Angela.
Yeah, I am. And the message from everyone, and I'm wrapping up, is to not let this place go. Money can't buy healing. Money can't buy love. And this place is love.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions of Angela? Okay, thank you. And Teresa, can you hear us now?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can hear you now. I tried everything and it worked this time to restart the whole computer. So thank you so much, and I apologize for the trouble.
And 5 minutes maximum, please.
Thank you. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Lubinski, and I am a school trustee for Etobicoke Lakeshore and Parkdale High Park of the Toronto Catholic District School Board. First, I'd like to thank Councillor Anthony Peruza and Councillor James Pasternak for putting a motion forward last month at City Hall to request heritage designation at 31 Western Road. This motion proposed full protection of Rivermead, the Gardner family's former country's estate, and the Marian Shrine of Gratitude located at 31 Western Road, which is just steps away from the banks of the Humber River. The Gardner's family opened their home, Rivermead, to various charities and organizations such as the Cradle Crutch of York Township, the Red Cross and Group Number 3 of the Women's Auxiliary, and Women's Auxiliary of the St. Clair YMCA. The First Nations of North America used a trail on the property as part of the trade route that connected northern and western Canada with the Gulf of Mexico. In 1958, the Ukrainian Basilian Fathers purchased Rivermead to use as a monastery and later filled in the outdoor swimming pool. This area evolved into a prayer garden named the Marian Shrine of Gratitude, where the public was welcome. Father Basil Tsimbalisti created the Marian Shrine of Gratitude, and after he passed away in 2018, the shrine remained public. People from Toronto, all over Ontario, and various parts of the world have visited the shrine. My family and I have been going there to the shrine for about a decade. I know the spiritual value of the place, as do the people from different cultures that have visited. I was fortunate to see the house interior. The well-maintained original and historical structure is magnificent. The City of Toronto needs to acknowledge the historical and cultural significance of Rivermead and the architectural value of the home, the significance of the Gardiner family in Toronto's history, and the evolution of the Marian Shrine of Gratitude as a prayer garden loved by thousands of people from various cultures. It uniquely merges old and new values. The city needs to recognize its historic sites through the eyes of new Canadians and immigrants, and Rivermead offers that opportunity. At the end of summer, I began working with my colleagues on the Toronto Catholic District School Board to protect the property at 31 Weston Road. Together, we formed a motion that passed unanimously, requesting that both the City of Toronto and the Government of Ontario designate the former Gardiner family summer resort, Basilian Father's House, including the Marian Shrine of Gratitude, located at 31 Weston Road in Toronto, as a heritage site protected by the Ontario Heritage Act. In this forgotten northwest corner of Toronto, there is no property standing with this wealth of heritage value. As an elected official, I'm entrusted to protect people's needs, and I'm here to represent a substantial number of my constituents from Etobicoke Lakeshore and Parkdale High Park. The Marian Shrine of Gratitude is the heritage of New Toronto, which includes multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-faith communities, where people found spiritually, and the shrine is our heritage now. The asphalt pathway from the parking lot to the shrine is part of the heritage and shows that it was public and open to all in Toronto until recently. Toronto is an immigrant city. The Marian Shrine of Gratitude is part of the park system in Toronto that all people visit, and it should remain public. I hope that Toronto Preservation Board will approve the motion regarding the request to consider heritage designation at 3100 Weston Road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa. Any questions for Teresa? Okay, just one clarification that I think staff will also make, and that this is extending the listing at this point. It is not the designation, but at least it will modify the listing to include this very important shrine. So I just want people to be clear about that.
Hello.
Hello, who's speaking? Okay, the next person is Rose Savage. Is Rose here, please?
Hello.
Who is, Matthew, who's doing that?
Yes, my name is Mr. Lochner.
We're trying to mute this person. It's not their time to speak. We've been trying to mute this person, and I can ask them to keep their audio off until they're called to speak, please.
Okay, because I don't even have that name on my list. Okay, but for the time being, Rose Savage, is Rose here?
Hi, I'm Rose Savage. Could you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great.
You have 5 minutes maximum, please, Rose.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I submitted correspondence as well. And so what I was going to review right now are 4 articles that I've sent everyone with regards to 3100 Western Road as it relates to the heritage. One is the architect of Emery's treasured Rivermead Emery Village, which is dated March 2022. The second one is Rivermead House and its first owner, Percy Gardner Emery Village, and that was dated April 2022. The third one is North York resident calls for fixes to Carmine Stefano. That was dated June 2019, and it was updated on May 27, 2023. And the last one, the fourth one, is Rivermead House and its second owner, Jethro Krang Emery Village, dated May 2022. So with that being said, and that's already in the internet available for anybody to read, licensed professional real estate professionals, as well as lawyers, ensure that the buyer is made aware of anything that's heritage in nature and does the research that the land is a designated shrine for all to enjoy. In addition, any existing applications with decades of dedication from community members, public officials, as well as formal and informal contracts and agreements in place to support the community's use. This too would be brought to the buyer's attention and should not have been ignored nor changed prior to the closing of the transaction. Formal acknowledgement, agreement, understanding, and respect for the applicants and the applications already in progress at the City of Toronto are all required in order to proceed with the closing of the transaction. The Planning Department process, as well as the understanding of the current Planning Act, official plan, and zoning bylaws, which require formal public consultation through committee of the whole, are required with any planned changes to existing use. So the transaction ignored or ignores and disrespects the City of Toronto and the community at large by their failure to adhere to these established processes and the needs of the community. So that's my message, and I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very, very much, Rose. Any questions for Rose? Okay, seeing none. Okay, the next speaker on my list is one of two from Averance Core Development, and it is, and Samuel, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. It's Samuel Barbarind, is that correct? Samuel? Matthew, any sign of Samuel?
I'll unmute. Is Samuel on the phone? I don't see Samuel connected directly. There are three phone numbers that we see, but I don't know if Samuel is one of them.
So should I just carry on through the list then, please?
Yep, let's go on to the next, please.
Okay, so the next person I have is Tom Racco Civic. Have I totally botched that, Tom?
You're doing great. It's I say Rakocevic, but there's many ways to say it.
Rakocevic, that makes more sense. And you're the MPP from Humber River Black Creek.
I am.
I'm 5 minutes.
Yes, I'll keep it brief. I will not reiterate the work and the research done by planning staff. I thank everyone for the work in looking into the important history of the site. I think they've done a great job. I'm just simply here to say that I agree with the recommendations and to state the degree of overwhelming interest by not just the community, but the community from afar, from across the Toronto, the GTA, and more. And this is a place visited by thousands and thousands each year. It has a developing and beautiful ongoing history, again, that you have done a great job documenting, and others who have written in, I guess, about that as well have done so. You know, the present is the history of tomorrow, and this is a site of significance as well, and a part of the city, Northwest Toronto, where there are very few heritage properties. In fact, this is one of the longest standing sites.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
In the area, so It is of very, very importance, great importance to protect the site for the future and beyond. And those are essentially the points that I want to make. The final thing is to say that we have seen different petitions of over 20,000 people writing in different ways, shapes, or forms, speaking to the need to preserve the site for now and for the future as well. It is very meaningful, and you've done the history, and it continues to develop, and there continues to be significant interest. They are reaching out to me and to many people, and people still gather to this day on the city property as well with the hopes of preserving it. So I just want to let you know that there is tremendous, tremendous interest. You know the historical value and the ongoing history of the site, and it is of importance to preserve it for now and for future generations, because it is a meaningful place, not just in northwest part of the city, but to Toronto and beyond.
Thank you very, very much.
Hello, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? This is Samuel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any queries? Thank you. And we'll go on to the next person. Who is this?
Sorry, Madam Chair, can you hear me? This is Samuel.
Oh, this is Samuel?
Correct, ma'am.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. We were trying to reach you before. So Samuel, you've got 5 minutes maximum. I take it you're the developer who has purchased the site?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak here today.
Okay.
I have drafted a speech as well, which I've sent to you with some addendums and some pictures. I hope you can take a look at that before you make your recommendation. I am a part owner of this property. And first and foremost, I'd like to declare, as clear as possible, that the shrine do not exist any longer on this property. The shrine has been cleared off this property by the previous owner. The church is no longer the owner or the legal owner of this property. We are the legal owner of this property. We are a for-profit organization, not a religious organization, and we have absolutely nothing to do with the shrine. We've made this extremely clear to the organizers that we have no interest to continue to host this illegal shrine on our property. The Catholic Church, the Vatican, the Archbishop of Toronto denounced this shrine categorically in different forms. They've issued press release to the public, letting them know that this shrine, the Catholic Church is not in support of this illegal shrine. We feel like our property rights have been violated by the minority worshipers of this shrine that continue to violate our property rights through trespassing our property. And we feel it's quite disappointing, extremely disappointing, that the MPP, Tom, and the councillor, Anthony, are inciting insurrection on our property by giving false hope to the public and to the minority worshipers of this shrine that the shrine will return. This property, the Runnymede property, is a fantastic property that we are going to preserve moving forward. We are going to restore the property. The heritage component of this property will not be destroyed. We are going to, the property will actually be, one of the partners of our company will live in the property. And the pool, which is currently illegally used as a shrine, will be reinstated back to a pool, which is exactly what it was initially in 1919 when it was constructed and built by the Gardner family. Our intention is to utilize the pool to conduct different charitable events for the larger community to benefit from this property. This is no longer public property. This is a private property owned by a developer. And we do not appreciate the councillor and the MPP encouraging the public to continue to trespass our property. If they care so much about the shrine, we would encourage the councillor and Tom and Angie, who is the organizer of the shrine, to pick the product, to pick the items from the storage and instate the shrine on their private properties. They have homes. They can put the shrine on their private properties. We would not tolerate the public continue to violate our property rights, and continue to trespass our property. Our lawyers are currently working and putting a $10 million lawsuit against all the parties involved in this whole entire incident, and we're going to fight this out in court. We would urge the city not to get involved in this matter because the city will be dragged into this lawsuit because our private property is violated, and we're not going to tolerate this any longer. These guys, the Shrine guys, are a bunch of squatters on our property, and they need to go. Setting a bad precedent by passing this motion would encourage other squatters to trespass other properties in Toronto, resulting in multiple lawsuits, which will include the city of Toronto. This is a very bad precedent, and this needs to be stopped at this track. We are not going to destroy the property. Runnymede property will remain the way it is. We're going to reinstate the property. And by the way, I got to make two distinctions there. There's two problems that we're talking about here. There's a heritage component of the property, which is very clear. We are not going to destroy the property. We're not going to change the heritage component of the property. And there's Marian Shrine. These are two separate incidents that these folks are trying to put together. These are separate components. Shrine does not belong onto this property. The Catholic Church has denounced this shrine, this Marian Shrine, and they were illegally occupying the property for their illegal acts.
Can you please wrap, Samuel? Samuel, can you please wrap up? Yep. You've almost used up your time.
Absolutely. The Marian Shrine is not recognized as an official legal charitable organization. They are not registered with CRA. They've been collecting money from the public over the last 20 years.
Okay, and I have to cut you off here, Samuel. Samuel, I have to cut you off. You've had your 5 minutes, and I think your message is pretty clear, and it's pretty interesting. So can I just ask you one question? Is Tegbir Caron going to speak as well?
Yes, madam.
So both of you need to speak.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have some questions for Samuel.
Yeah, Adam, go ahead.
Samuel, the section of your property that formerly contained the shrine is located within the TRCA boundary area, which has restrictions on what forms of development can take place. The pool, of course, dates to 1919, but it would likely need upgrades as it's been filled in for a number of years. Have you applied at all for conservation-related permits irrespective of heritage? Because I think that would be something, it would be intrinsically linked to the heritage, but you may not even be able to build a pool with the Conservations Act.
I appreciate the fact that you asked me that question. We have spent over $1 million in doing a thorough feasibility study on this property. We've retained a heritage consultant who is currently working and has basically completed a report, and a very thorough report that will be sent to the city shortly. We know exactly what the problems are with the city, with this property. There's 3 different components to this property. You got the community center section of the property. You got the Rivermate property of the house, Rivermate Estate section of the property, and you got the playing fields, which are located at the back of the property. These are 3 segments of the property. The Runnymede Estate will remain as an estate. We do not plan any future development on this part of this property. The playing fields at the back, which is referred to as wetland, will remain as playing fields, and we do not have any interest in developing on that section of the property. The community center, our proposed development, future development, is strictly limited to the community center part of this property. So, for the councillor and the politicians to continue to lie to the public and put fear in the public that we intend to develop the whole entire property is completely irresponsible, because this does not reflect the reality of what's going on the ground. They are inciting insurrection on our property, galvanizing the public against us for frivolous reasons.
It would be the province of Ontario, but regardless, it will be interesting to see whether the 1919 pool is feasible to restore to use after that many years of not being maintained as a pool feature. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of Samuel? Yes, Paul.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is in your deputation, you made reference to items in storage from the shrine. My question is, are you the entity that has those items in storage? Are you conserving those items?
the items has absolutely nothing to do with us. The items were removed by the Catholic Church, and they're currently locked in a storage close by to the property. They've instructed Angela, who's the organizer of the shrine, to remove this property from the storage. She refused to remove the property because she said she has no money. So we continue to pay to store this property at the church expense. And these guys are crying about shrine, but they refuse to pick up the product or the item from storage. So I don't know how long the property is going to stay there in the storage if they so care about this shrine that they keep crying about.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you're not the one holding those items. That's all I wanted to know.
No, it's not us. We have absolutely nothing to do with the shrine. It's basically the church.
Okay, and my second question is do you dispute the assertion that the previous owner of the property granted the public access to the property prior to your taking possession of the property? Is that a fact?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
I do have a letter to that effect that was posted in 2006. I have another letter asking these folks to leave the property and making it clear to them that they are trespassing the property. But the fathers, the previous owner, were met with abuse and threat from this organization. They've been threatening, and they've been threatening us as well. We've called the police, 31 Division, to this property multiple times because these folks are assaulting our security officers, spitting on our security officers, inciting violence on our property. I've personally been threatened of gun violence on this property. And this is our property. Our property rights is completely violated, and this cannot be tolerated in the city of Toronto. It would set a very bad precedent.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Sorry, one other question, Samuel. Is the Ukrainian...
Adam, hold on.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Would you like, okay, is there anyone else before Adam asks the question? Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Samuel, have you approached any of the other Ukrainian Catholic orders in Toronto about the shrine and whether they could take the objects? Because it seems that the objects in the shrine do have some community heritage value. We have a number of Ukrainian Catholic congregations in Toronto that may be interested in them. And that might be an avenue for...
I'm very glad you asked that question, sir. This is something we are willing, we are willing to invest our money to relocate this shrine from where it is and put it to good use somewhere else. Matter of fact, like I said, if the politicians want this shrine in the backyard, we will install the shrine in the backyard at no cost to them, including relocating the shrine to the Ukraine order wherever they're located. I know there's another Ukrainian order in Brampton or Caledon, which the shrine can be relocated at. These folks are not willing or ready to talk about the reality. They rather continue to violate our property rights, incite insurrection on our property, act like they care so much about the shrine, and they try to link the shrine with the heritage aspect of the property. We have absolutely no problem with the city of Toronto designating this property as heritage, but it must not include the shrine. The shrine is not part of this property. And that's the message I like to get very clear, because our lawyers are listening, and we are going to go straight to court depending on the outcome of this whole entire hearing.
Okay, I have a question now, because now I'm really confused. Who is responsible for those objects? If somebody wanted to move those objects, who do they go to?
Madam Chair, I'm very glad you asked that question. Angie, who came out earlier with a fantastic speech, a moving, emotional speech, she's been flip-flopping on this issue. We asked her categorically, are you the owner of this shrine? She would tell you right off the bat, no, I'm just a volunteer. I'm not an owner. I do not know who the owners are. When it comes to taking responsibility, she completely denounces herself from attaching herself to the shrine. But when it comes to pushing the agenda in the public and wasting politicians' time and wasting your time, she's at the forefront of it as the organizers. So we do not really know who the organizers are. We keep encouraging Angie to come over and pick up the property. We have the keys. The property is sitting in the storage. Come over and pick up your property. But she refused to do so. She refused to come forward, and she continued to misrepresent herself as the volunteer of this, as a so-called just a volunteer, not the organizer, which is completely misleading.
Okay, so you have keys to the storage area where the objects are being kept. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions, Barbara?
Yes, the subject before this board is actually the revised wording of the listing for this property. And I would just like to know if the speaker has an objection to the revised wording of the listing, not the designation of this property.
Samuel?
Sorry, was that question directed to me or?
Yes.
Yes, it's directed to you, the speaker. Yes, Samuel.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Sir, could you repeat that question just so I make sure I understand it?
Okay. The subject before us is the revised wording of the listing for 3100 Western Road. And my question is, this is a revision of listing, not designation. Do you have an objection to the revision of the wording of the listing before us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam, yeah, I do have an objection to it. Like I said before, there's two components here that these guys are trying to model together and trying to model the water here. There's a heritage component of this property, which we have absolutely no problem designating or listing. This property will remain as a heritage property. We would not destroy this property. Matter of fact, the property would turn into a private residence, and one of the partners will live in the property as the primary residence.
Specifically, what do you object
continue.
to? Specifically, what wording do you object to in the revised listing?
We are objecting to attach a Marian shrine to this listing.
So you're objecting to the reference to the shrine within the revised wording?
That's correct, ma'am.
Specifically. Okay, that's what I, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Samuel? Okay, thank you, Samuel. So we
Thank you, Madam
have,
Chair.
sorry? Okay, so we have two more speakers before Samuel's partner. So the next speaker is Elizabeth Betian. Have I got that vaguely correct, Elizabeth?
Yes, madam.
Okay, you have 5 minutes maximum.
I will take much shorter than that. I will simply provide a different perspective than what has been provided before. And the perspective I wish to invite to be brought upon is the perspective of focusing on the well-being that this site has provided to so many people. I wrote also a statement to the board, which I will not read for the interest of time, but I would rather speak on two different perspectives on well-being. One is offered by Michael Anthony Hart, who is a citizen of the Fisher River Cree Nation. And while he was studying for his PhD in social work at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, wrote a book entitled Seeking Minopitsewin, an Aboriginal Approach to Helping. In his book, in a small passage, page 33, he writes that communities and nations' economic development must include a focus on the well-being of people, including 7 generations to come. And 7 generations is a principle of Aboriginal peoples, which I will not, for the interest of time, go into. But he goes on to say that this must be included in a way which will honor the values and beliefs given to the people by the generations who have moved on. And others have spoken of how lovingly Father Basil, who I had the privilege of meeting, make the efforts of making this as a peaceful place for people to focus on their well-being. Modern research tells us that meditation, mindfulness, and prayer have a very important part of people's mental health. We have all been stretched to the max in this city, and with so much economic and financial uncertainty, I feel that this shrine provides a place where people can recharge through different methods. And this shrine provides the external setting for individuals to practice internal practices such as meditation, such as mindfulness, such as prayer, so that they can recharge their well-being and keep going in the better version of themselves. So whatever the decision is come to by all peoples involved, I ask that, as Michael Anthony Hart puts a very beautiful saying, focus on the well-being of the people. I thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank you, the board, for considering this petition.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Elizabeth? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Perusa, are you there, please? Is the councillor there, Matthew?
Madam Chair, I see some. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I see someone in our list named Anthony.
Anthony Perusa, I believe.
Madam Chair, we can reach out by phone or by email to his office if you want to move on to the next.
Okay. So the next person is Tegbir Caron, and I hope I've pronounced that somewhat correctly, from France for Development. This is an associate of Samuel's at the developer's office. Tegbir, are you there?
Yeah, the pronunciation was perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to
Okay,
make sure.
you've got 5 minutes maximum, please.
Not a problem. I just want to start off by saying Sam has touched a point on a lot of things that I was going to say, which is completely fine by me. And I want to reiterate that this shrine, this makeshift shrine, has absolutely nothing to do with this property, and never had anything to do with this property, and hopefully never will have anything to do with this property either. I want to start off by saying hello, everyone. My name is Tegbir Singh. I'm one of the owners at 3100 Western Road. I never thought that purchasing land would be so controversial, but here we are. I want to start off by saying when we purchased this land, never did we once think that we would have to deal with protesters and squatters in our own backyard. We bought this land to enact one of our rights, which is the right to enjoy our property. I'm not sure how this is possible if I'm being threatened by these squatters who are confused in thinking that they have rights to our land. Before purchasing this very expensive property, we did all the due diligence possible to ensure that we weren't discriminating anyone's religion or culture. We are very religious people and would never do something that would result in the disrespect of anyone's beliefs. Once the Archbishop of Toronto, the Vatican Church, and the fathers who own this property told us that this shrine has absolutely no significance and the fathers actually have no problem with decommissioning this shrine, we decided to move forward with this purchase of land. Before this makeshift shrine was built, there was actually a beautiful pool on the property that we have full intention to, as long as we are allowed, on restoring and allowing the entire public to use for various events, for charity, and not just this minority group of worshippers who believe that they have more right to this land than everyone else. I want to express with major emphasis that moving forward with a heritage designation will set a terrible precedent for the city of Toronto. What is stopping me from going to a random backyard and anyone's property, building a shrine, and telling my so-called devotees that this place has religious significance, so we must preserve this area? This property purchase and everything has generated a lot of noise with MPPs and city council members supporting this senseless cause. I urge these MPPs and council members that are supporting this movement. We have absolutely no problem moving all the statues and religious artifacts to even their backyard at our expense to allow these people to continue to observe, as their location has no significance to a shrine, so why not move it somewhere else? I want to end off by saying to the board, I strongly recommend reviewing this decision very carefully, as setting such a terrible precedent will result in nothing but the downfall for property buyers and developers in this beautiful city. I thank everyone for their time.
Thank you. Are there questions? Tegbir, I have a question. Who did you buy the property from?
The property was purchased directly from the fathers.
From the fathers. Barbara?
Yes, my question is, it's a yes or no. Is it clear to you that this is not a designation under the Ontario Heritage Act that is before us? It is simply a revision of the already existing heritage listing for the property?
Yes.
Okay, because you keep referring to the designation, which is not what is before us. It is simply the revision of the existing listing wording. And your former partner said that the main objection was the reference to the shrine, which is only a reference as a historical association. Is this your objection to what is before us? Is the revision?
Yes, Barbara. As mentioned before, I started the speech that I had written last night. I wanted to reiterate that everything that was said by Sam, that our objection is against the shrine that has no significance to this property.
So your objection is to the mention of the shrine in the revised wording for the listing?
Yes, Barbara. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dick Beer? Okay, thank you. So that completes our list of deputants.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Matthew?
Madam Chair, Peruzza, I apologize. I was
Oh,
trying
sorry. Where are
yeah,
you?
I'm here.
Okay. Can you have 5 minutes, Counselor?
Thank you so much, and thank you for that. So you folks are absolutely correct. Today, you are basically amending a listing, and I hope that you do that. I agree with the recommendations in the report. Amending a listing that was basically forged in 1997, some 24 years ago, and a listing that migrated onto the City of Toronto's Heritage Registry in 2006, when the City of Toronto was then amalgamated. But the listing has not been looked at since, in the sense that, in the past 24 years, the site has evolved. As we all evolve in age, the site has evolved and aged as well. And in that time, the Marian Shrine of Gratitude made its way onto this property, and as you've heard from other people's stories, has basically, been nurtured to life by a very, very substantial and extensive community of folks. The Marian Shrine does not exist as the new owners would like to portray, necessarily at a site on land. Land, as some folks have pointed out, is within the Conservation Authority regulated below top of bank part of the site, that would fully be expected to be, to come into public ownership, I would expect, at some point in the future. A site that can't be developed or redeveloped in any significant way. But the property does have, as all of you have looked at and have seen, a great deal of heritage value. The house, the school, the chapel, the hill, the fields, the pond, the river, and yes, the shrine. I was a student back in the school some many years ago. I don't want to age myself, and I can tell you that the pool had been fully drained and was a non-active pool long before the shrine made its way into the site. Now, I understand the property owners are looking for villains in this saga. They bought a very public property, a property that has been welcoming the community and the general public for 70 plus years. First, as a school, then, for many, many years, and after school and the community and people using the fields and the hill to toboggan and all of those things. And later for a quarter century as a community center where the public has come onto the site in its fulsome, under the ownership of the Basilian Fathers, and have used the entire property for a great many number of things. I understand now in the past several months that these folks have come on and say, well, you know what, this is now private property. I get that. But they also need to have an understanding and an acceptance that the way the site is situated along the river, bounding the ravine, bounding the trail, the pond at the back that, developed, when the subdivisions came into existence there and so on. It is a very, very public property. And I understand that they're having some difficulty dealing with the notion of the public coming onto the site. But there's an active community center there that basically welcomes the public for community center program. There are fields that are permitted at the back that welcomes the public for permit use and passive recreational use as well. So in all of that, I would hope that you would revise, amend the listing today to include those things. And I'm glad that many of you have asked some very acute questions about the artifacts that were removed from the shrine portion of the property that have very big deal of significance for a lot of community members who have actually to those things. Now we were guaranteed by the Brazilian fathers on their way out the door that removed some of those elements. And the new
Councillor, I'm
owners
going to have
believe
to ask you to wrap, but we will be asking you questions, I can assure you.
just to make the last point, really about why you've been asking those questions, because I suspect that under your further review of the property, your folks are going to want to look at those artifacts that were removed from the shrine and assess them for their own heritage value and heritage importance. And we need to ensure that wherever those things are being kept and stored, that they continue to be kept and stored and safeguarded, so until that review is able to be finished, because there's lots of pictures and lots of video of all of those things that were taken out of the show.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So are there questions for the councillor?
Excuse me.
Hello.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions, but I'm not certain if it's best to direct them to Heritage Planning or Councillor Peruzza. But just very briefly, are there specific artifacts within the shrine that have been flagged to your office as being the heritage contributing features? I know this is a listing rather than a designation. For example, St. Basil's Church on Bay Street has a human heart located underneath the altar. Some of those would be harder to move than others, and of course, there's a miracle associated with this specific site. I'm just wondering which aspects of the shrine itself are considered constituting the shrine versus the ancillary objects. And the second is, has your office had any contact with the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy? It's based on Bellwoods Avenue over at Trinity Bellwoods. They would be the, I think, authoritative figure when it comes to where to have these artifacts taken. And I don't think anyone has actually mentioned speaking to that office yet.
Yeah, so the answer to the second question is no. And I understand that the owners want villains in this saga, in this story, but I have come very late onto the site, and because the community, obviously, when the several months ago, when some of those elements of the shrine were being taken out in the shrine, then there were letters circulating that the shrine would then be closed to the public because of the sale that the sale was going through. Obviously, there was a big reaction by the community, and I was invited onto the site. And while I had seen it in the past, I had never been an active. I'd never had any active involvement with it. Although in the past several months, I've been well educated by the community and so on. And that's why I say that the shrine lives in the hearts and minds of the people that have worshipped there, and the people that have witnessed miracles there and have received miracles there. And it lives amongst them. And what I witnessed and what the miracle was for me, as the gates were being closed to the shrine, I attended the event, and there were hundreds of people in the shrine, and basically the tears and sorrow streaming down the faces of the young and the old and everyone else. And that was the miracle for me, the attachment, the emotional, spiritual attachment that people had to this location, to this, into their sense of worship and their sense of peace there. And that for me was a miracle. And then, I thought, you know what, this needs to be preserved. And these people have nurtured this place, have taken care of it so long. And I know that the owners continue to refer to squatters and so on, but these folks have been nurturing this site for 18 years, and it's not like these owners are dealing with an adverse possession claim by the community, saying, look, we've been here, we've been taking care of it, with the complicity and the participation of the Brazilian fathers, the former owners and so on. And now here you go, you know what? We would like to, claim it for ourselves. That's not what we're doing here. So when they use these labels, the new owners, they need to really sort of be careful and cognizant of the fact that what they're dealing with here, and they use words like rebellion and so on. What they're dealing with here is a very peaceful community of people who just want a place to pray, a connection to a place where they come and find spiritual peace and solace for themselves. That's not rebellion or insurrection or squatters. They parade on a field near the site and have a spiritual connection to it. So I would ask those folks to tone down the rhetoric, tone down their conversation, and really what they really should be doing is reaching out to us as a community and saying, look, how can we move forward together here? Because this is a serious conversation that we need to have with these folks going forward if they want to. Unless they want to turn the site into a golf range and knock golf balls from the top of the hill.
Thank you, Councillor Perruzza.
Those conversations need to take place.
Okay, thank you. We've got the message.
Madam Chair, one brief comment, Councillor. I recommend perhaps your office might facilitate a meeting between the various core parties here with the Ukrainian eparchy, because that seems like it might be an option to come to a resolution. And if the folks are talking to all these different organizations, Vatican City and such, perhaps talking to the regional office may have a more acute response when it comes to the situation.
Anyways, let's carry on. We have one
suggestions and we'll take you up on that.
Yeah. Okay. One last person is Olga Rubino, who wishes to speak and who registered before the meeting. Hi, Olga.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you, Madam Chair. And
You've
good morning,
got
everyone.
5 minutes.
It'll be brief. I'm going to read from some notes, so I'll just take the camera off while I'm reading and then speaking spontaneously.
Okay.
So good morning, Madam Chair and everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm here to make a plea for the support of the listing and also to make a plea to maintain 3100 Weston Road as a heritage property to be preserved in its original state. I would like to remind us all that the property includes several aspects to it. There is the Tudor style house, there are the backyard gardens with the Marian Shrine, there's the outdoor gazebo, and there is what I call, not being an architect, but the L-shaped red brick building that houses the chapel, the original church named St. Basil the Great Church, and also the original high school named St. Basil the Great College School. So what is my affiliation to all of this? I am by vocation a teacher. I am a retired French Immersion High School department head, supervising principal of Elementary International Schools program with the Toronto Catholic District School Board, and have served the community in education for over 40 years. My other affiliation is my aunt, Esterina Colaguori, who is 96 years of age, lives in the neighborhood and is one of the original members of the Rosary group, who actually every day for about 20 years went with over 20 people to help to maintain the shrine. She pruned the roses. She helped Stanley the gardener. She taught him, we are of Italian heritage background. She's an immigrant. She taught him how to maintain the property, donated many artifacts herself, including the Bible. So I will just continue on those 2 points. So my affiliation, 1, the Catholic education, and 2, the personal prayer, spiritual aspect component to my presentation here today. So for number 1, the Catholic education, a case to honor the historical evolution of education in Ontario. Our school building and chapel, St. Basil the Great, at 3100 Western Road was opened in 1962. It was the very first Catholic high school to serve the northwestern area of Toronto. The red brick building at the site houses that original Catholic high school, St. Basil the Great College School, and the building also houses the chapel, but the two are in and of themselves in one building. Education and regular religious practices held in the chapel were an integral part of Catholic education. I feel very proud to have been part of that entire movement. I have done some research. I will provide Madam Chair with the research papers if I am allowed. The research papers have been written which give evidence to the importance, the historical importance that took place from the 1800s with the British North America Act to the famous Tiny Township case in 1925 and the ensuing creation of Catholic schools in the province of Ontario. The preservation of the chapel and the school, St. Basil the Great, honor this history, this legacy, this heritage in Toronto. Two important research papers are, one is entitled History of Catholic Education, prepared by the Ontario Association of Parents in Catholic Education. It delineates the historical events that took place and in federal law to support the Catholic education and the movement in Ontario. And the other paper, A Short History of Catholic Schools in Ontario, prepared by Dr. Mark G. McGowan, Professor of History at St. Michael's College, University of Toronto. That is a comprehensive paper on the historical importance of the various Catholic school buildings themselves in Toronto. The preservation of the red brick building as is at 3100 Weston Road, which houses the school and the chapel, and which, you know, within that building, there are as well icons, religious icons within the chapel. And I do understand that the school now has been converted and is being used as a community center. However, that one building in and of itself does also house icons. And maintaining this building would honor the rich heritage and historical importance of the school and the chapel, both named St. Basil the Great. Now I'll pass on to my second point.
You're going to have to wrap up, please. Olga.
Okay. The Tudor-style building, Marian Shrine, an outdoor gazebo. We've heard a lot about that, so I'll just go very briefly. All of the miracles that have taken place and have been recorded. My aunt, who is 96 years old, Esterina Colagori, has a lot of the oral history with regards to the events. She was interviewed on City TV. I can obtain the oral history that she has and write that down. So I'm just wrapping it out. In conclusion, I feel it's our duty as Torontonians to support this listing and also to maintain the entire 3100 Weston Road site as a heritage site.
Thank you
Thanks
very
much for your
much.
time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Olga? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Olga.
Thank you.
Who's speaking now? Okay. So now we're up to asking questions of staff, of which there may be several. So Julia, do you want to get the ball rolling?
Sure thing. For staff, I think perhaps something to the effect of what does a listing do? What are the next steps? What does this mean for the property? I think that would be really fruitful given the number of listeners here, because we have an amendment to the listing before us. So let's say this happens, what are then the next steps going forward? And what is the heritage focus? Because there's lots of other different strings here, and we want to ensure that our focus remains on the heritage.
Through you, Madam Chair. Good morning again. There's so much to unpack in this item, and I appreciate the focus here on the listing itself, because it is very important that everybody, including the community, understands what is happening here at this moment, what is yet to come, and for the owners as well to understand that. And Barbara McPhail was getting to some of it in her line of questioning as well. So what we thought was important was to ensure that through the listing, as this property goes forward, understanding that there will be a development here, that all of the pieces and parts of the historic associations in particular are recognized. So it's while Rivermead as the individual house was the one that came forward with the original listing, over time the property has become very prominently associated with what happened after the 1950s, after the sale to the Basilian Fathers. So the Fathers, in fact, are embedded in the history of the house itself, not just the original owners, because it was occupied by them and because of the prominent place that they had in the community and within their own order. So they are associated with the house. Over time, then we have as we heard, the creation of the school, of the chapel, of the various associated features. So you've heard many perspectives. This is a complex site. And some of it can be redeveloped for a variety of reasons. Some of it cannot be for perhaps conservation-related reasons. But at this time, we're not trying to understand the future of the property. And we're not determining the future of the property either. And it's as important for the community and the owners to know that what we are trying to do is establish a number of values that have come to this property. And community value, I just want to be clear, community value is not given by owners. And I don't say that to be provocative, just to say we've certainly, and this board has seen instances where we have listed properties by an architectural firm. And the architectural firm has actually come forward to our sort of chagrin and surprise and said, no, that property that I designed is not important to me. It doesn't represent my work. It doesn't do whatever. And so I do not believe it should be listed. And yet the individual who either owns or creates the property is not the one that gives the value. It's the value that things have to communities. And that's what the Heritage Act is really focused around, community value. So it's very clear that there is strong community value here related to the Basilian Fathers. In 2005, the shrine activity began, and it's to the work that we're doing for the listing. It's not been important for us to determine whether it was or was not a shrine that was recognized in some formal listing of shrines. Who says it is this, who says it is that, who owns the objects, who don't own the objects. We're looking at value. So again, the fact that there has been a tremendous amount of interest and concern, and also evidence that since 2005, there have been many individuals who have found peace and solace and all the things that you've heard. That is an intangible heritage value. That is a sacred value. That is there regardless of whether or not there are objects there. I do recognize that within the Catholic tradition, objects are very important, but under the Heritage Act, objects are actually considered to be chattel because they're movable, precisely because you can pick them up and take them away and put them in a storage locker. And I'm still not clear entirely who owns the objects, but that's for another day. The objects are not a question here. The property will have value whether it becomes a swimming pool again. The property will have that value because the community has given it that value. Again, I say that to not presume the future of the site, but to say that from our perspective, with our research and from what we've heard from the community, this has been a place of sacred significance to a number of people over the years. And that can be so if the fathers think it is or is not significant, if the current owners think it is not significant. We believe that to be true. And a reasonable statement of fact from what we've heard. What we've decided to do, council had asked us to look at a designation. And so because there are many things to understand about the various complex and interconnected nature of this site post-1950, we wanted to rewrite, update the listing to get the 1950s into it, to ensure that the shrine was mentioned as something that has been associated with the site, not because we want to control it, not because we think that there is, not that we're trying to, trample on property rights or anything, but just to put that out as a statement. Because of the way things work with heritage impact assessments and the development process, this just allows us to say and because there is clearly a difference of perspective on the values to the site. So this is what we're saying at this time. Through the development process, I'm very pleased to hear that there's a heritage consultant who's been hired to do a heritage analysis of the site. I hope that it will be comprehensive and not just discount the value of anything here because there is an attempt to say that something has no value. To say it has no value is to my mind, we would say that because we didn't think that that was something that should be saved. And we see again and again with this group, with the designations when they come forward, even things that we say have value are removed. They are demolished. They are changed. So again, the discussion about the whole site will happen and is beginning. And this is very important input. When the development moves forward with further discussion with the city, our role will be to look at the heritage impact assessment, to do the additional work that's necessary, and to express what we believe to be a comprehensive set of heritage values for the site, which will come forward presumably at a future time as a designation. And then after that, there will be the discussions will become very focused on what is going to happen in the various pieces and parts of this property, of which there are a number of things going on. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I really wanted to be as comprehensive, and if I've missed something there, please do ask me more questions.
Before you do that, thank you very, very, very much, Mary. That's extremely helpful. My head is about to burst. But that said, it's 12:21 and we have to vote to extend the meeting past 12:30, and we have the one more item. So for starters, never mind how long the next item will take. Let's just vote to extend till what, 1 o'clock, Matthew?
Madam Chair, yes, you can extend to 1 o'clock. You can also extend to complete the agenda.
That would be my favorite.
We need to be clear on which one we're voting on, though.
Yes, I will. I would personally like to extend to finish the agenda because I don't think it really stretches things even more if we have to then go away for 30 minutes and come back. I have put this motion before you. And Adam, are you back? Your camera was off. I need everybody for a vote. Adam Wynn, are you there? There you are. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's right. Okay. So, all in favor of extending till the agenda's over? Okay, we're all in favor. So let's keep going. So Mary, thank you very much. What I would say is the listing gives you, it's like a placeholder. It's like a stake in the sand that will keep this in front of people until exactly what you said. You see a development plan, you get a heritage impact assessment, and you can go into that deeper dive that is necessary. But if we don't list it, then it's gone. I mean, then you can't say, gee willikers, let's come back and call it something else. And the other thing is with the new rules, which we will hear about how they're being dealt with in the next item, if we don't list it, then when the development application comes in, you're toast because it wouldn't have been listed before a prescribed event happened. Is that correct, Mary?
Well, it's yes and no.
Semi-toast.
Madam Chair,
Toasted.
because the property is already listed, we would
Right.
have been in a position to be okay to designate.
Yeah.
But we thought, given the age of the listing and also given the what the very prominent conversations that are happening here, that we felt that it was important to do an updated listing. To
Okay.
be very clear from the city's perspective that we believe it includes the post-1950 history. And I'll put it broadly because that is what we're doing. It's all the post-1950 history of which the shrine has occupied a part of. But we didn't outline attributes. We didn't do any of that. We wanted to give a comprehensive sense of what as a place to begin the conversation.
That's right.
So in that sense, you are correct,
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Barbara.
Yes, thank you, Mary, for the comprehensive explanation. That is actually what I was trying to get forward, was the fact that this is only the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
My one question is that in the revised wording, I wanted to know why the word important site was put in for the Marian Shrine of Gratitude, and whether or not it would have been better served to have used in the revised wording important at the front of that paragraph, which would encompass all of the history and historical associations of the site. I'm wondering if that word important for the shrine is problematic.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we'd have to think about that. I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, I guess the thing is when we are noting something as having heritage value, we're basically saying we think all of those things that we're mentioning have some importance. And perhaps the emphasis there was on the word site as a location and not so much on the word important, because it's all important. And so I'm not sure what material a difference that might make. It's too complicated for me to say on the fly, but I think that's a really interesting point. It may seem semantic, but semantics are important here. And so we can take that back and think about it as this moves forward and see if that would make any difference in how we would. I don't think the interpretation of it would vary by having that word or not, but it isn't necessary. That's true, because the site is important for a variety of reasons over its history. The site writ large, the property, I suppose. Yeah.
My preference would be to remove important, but I think the way it reads, that people can read that the emphasis is on the importance of the shrine. It can be read that way. I personally feel that important, if it is to be used, should be up front or not at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? I tend to agree with Barbara because that's where I thought the focus was adding the shrine. But anyway, are there other questions for Mary? Yes, Robert. You're muted, Robert.
Should we be considering an amendment?
Yeah, that's that the recommendations be amended to place the word important.
No, I mean, I think that the suggestion that an important, it should be a site rather than an important site. Since we're describing everything that's important.
Yeah.
And just to say, a site may even be a little bit of a red herring as a word, but I'm not sure. Place. We speak to sense of place. We speak to intangible value. There are lots of different ways to express this. I would like to take a minute. I'm just getting some notes from Gary, and I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, if the board wishes to come forward with a motion, we can help you with that. But the precise wording is a little bit elusive to me in this minute.
Okay.
So maybe it could be a motion to consider the wording in order to be clear that the entire property has significance, because we have the word property, we have site, we have space, we have place, we have a bunch of different things going on there in terms of hierarchies.
Right.
Can you kind of look that over, and are there any other questions of staff? Okay, is there any discussion among us? Okay, so what I'm going to recommend is I hold this down. You figure out, Mary, what you're comfortable with, and then can we go on to PB 10.7, the staff presentation, and then come back to this for a vote? Is that just to keep the meeting moving?
Well, actually, we could move it even more right now, because we're just having a little behind the scenes discussion. And I think staff would certainly be comfortable, if the board would be comfortable, revising to a place of spiritual meaning.
Of spiritual
meaning. Yeah. So it's
Does that
not
work
an
for
important
everyone?
and not an important site of spiritual meaning, but a place of spiritual meaning, as
Yes.
well as a space for peaceful reflection.
Yes.
I think that would be appropriate.
Yep. Okay, so can you make it into official words that we can then vote on, please?
I see Matthew typing there. Is it possible for Matthew, for you to write it up for Madam Chair? Or would you like it to come from staff?
I would like to know better where in attachment 2 this should be amended.
Okay.
That
Do you want to
said,
hold it? Yes.
Madam Chair, this may be an opportunity to go on to the next item while we
Okay,
while we
so
work out the wording.
let's do what I suggested. Staff comes up with the rest, and then we'll come back to this and we'll vote on it.
Okay. I'll ask Gary Meadham to work with Matthew on that, please. Thank you.
Okay, so who is giving the presentation on Bill 23?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. It's me, Paul Macca.
Hiya, Paul. How are you?
Hello, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so good afternoon through you, Chair. My name is Paul Macca, and I'm an acting program manager with Heritage Planning. A slide, please, Emma. So I'm here this afternoon to give you a brief update on the City of Toronto's ongoing implementation of Bill 23, and to provide you with the approach that we'll be undertaking to continue to implement Bill 23 over the months to come, including the review of the Heritage Register. Slide, please. So as you recall, through Bill 23, the province made significant changes to the Ontario Heritage Act. I'm not going to go into detail on all of these changes as we've discussed them previously, but I'll touch on some of them for you this morning or this afternoon. Slide, please. So listed properties must be removed from
Paul,
the...
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Somebody has a telephone on hold.
We've muted that already, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
Okay. So listed properties must be removed from the register if council does not give a notice of intention to designate the property on or before the second anniversary of the day the property was included in the register. So this is that clause or the amendment that says all newly listed properties can only stay on the register for a period of 2 years. And then the next one, properties included in the register as of the day before the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022 comes into force must be removed from the register if council does not give a notice of intention to designate on or before the second anniversary of the act coming into force. So the act came into force on January 1st, 2023. So this clause affects all properties that were listed on the register up until that time. So properties that were listed on the register as of the date the amendments came into force. And then properties removed from the register under subsections 14 to 16 may not be listed again for a period of 5 years. And then if a property is subject to a prescribed event, council may not give notice of intention to designate the property if it has not already been listed. So these are some of the amendments. So all of the changes to the act are now in effect. Some of these changes had immediate implications, like the requirement that properties designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act meet 2 provincial criteria, and that properties not listed at the time of a prescribed event cannot be designated. Others, like the 2-year limitation on listing that I just read through, are now in place, but have implications that are yet to come. And as you've seen through our work, we've phased a response to Bill 23 and prioritized work on the amendments that had immediate implications. To this end, we've changed the way that we're listing by generally focusing on properties where we're seeing or anticipating development. And we've streamlined our listing reports, and we've obtained the Chief Planner's delegated approval to list properties in specific circumstances. So with these changes, heritage planning work in the city has continued, and you've seen the results of this work at this committee through our designations and development reports. But while we've been implementing these changes, we've also been gearing up for the changes that'll have the future implications for the city, such as the 2-year limitation on listing. Slide, please. So now speaking specifically to listed properties, we've been laying the groundwork for the upcoming exercise to prioritize the designation of properties. The first step was to conduct an audit of the existing heritage register, including cleaning up our database, filling in missing information, and undertaking a desktop analysis of the 4,000 pre-existing listed properties with the assistance of the community preservation panels. Very thankful for the work of the panels as we did that, did the audit. Now a desktop analysis of the 7,000 properties, 7,000 designated properties is underway. And this will allow us to undertake a register comparative analysis, including gap analysis work. We've also developed a development potential model that we've created as a review input. Okay, the next slide, please. Just want to walk you through this. So working with the city planning's research and analytics team, we designed a development potential tool that'll assist us in determining whether or not a listed property is located within an area where the city anticipates growth. The tool is grounded in the city's official plan and looks at factors such as official plan designation, secondary plan area, major streets, development pipeline, major transit station areas, so that's MTSAs and PMTSAs. We've also collected building permit data from the last 10 years that allow us to determine whether specific properties are within an area seeing a high volume of development activity. Next slide, please. So just one example here. Briefly, I'll take you through one way we can use this data. It's a really powerful model, but this is only just one example that we've chosen. So using a combination of filters, including construction date, community council area, typology, subtypology, and major street, we can pinpoint specific property types. For instance, we can sort pre-1945 apartments in Toronto and East York and narrow them to a selection of 37 properties out of 130 citywide. And then by layering these filters and various prioritization indicators, we can assess and contrast against city planning considerations, determine whether or not a property is located on a major street. Next slide. So given the scale of the task that's before us, we've also looked for outside help and expertise to guide us with our register work and the Bill 23 implementation moving forward. And recently, the city has engaged ASI to assist us in implementing the Bill 23 changes to the Heritage Act. The ASI team includes sub-consultants with additional expertise, such as engagement specialist Maximum City. And phase 1 of the ASI's work has commenced. Just want to take you through the deliverables. Next slide, please. So the ASI team is helping us prioritize the 4,000 listed properties for designation. They're going to be advising us on an optimal approach for designation. They're going to be preparing a toolkit of alternate approaches to designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. So are there other ways we can be protecting properties? We're exploring options for monitoring listed properties beyond January 1st, 2025, and preparing and implementing an outreach and engagement strategy for the project. Next slide, please. So just take you through the approach. The projects will take the following approach. There's a sector scan that we're undertaking. So this is underway right now. We're targeting interviews with other municipalities that have they're taking interesting approaches to Bill 23 and also have large registers that are similar to the City of Toronto's register. And we've also have a survey out to the entire province, the interior planners across the province, municipal planners, to get a sense of what their municipalities are doing through Bill 23. There's also a SWOT analysis upcoming that's underway right now, with information gathering happening now on heritage planning in the city. A registered gap analysis, so we expect to undertake that next year. So there are gaps in the heritage register that we should be looking at. And the team is going to be developing principles, methodology, and a framework for prioritizing listed properties for designation. And of course, there's going to be a robust engagement and consultation program as part of this work, with clear an emphasis on the principles for prioritization. So we will have a city website or a website for this project, or a web page for this project, which will be up in the next week or so. Technical advisory group will be reaching out to stakeholder consultations, public surveys, and events. Next slide, please. Just a quick look at the timeline. So the project will phase 1 of the project is going to be the sector scan, the SWOT analysis, and then the preparation of the engagement and communications plan. So this is what's underway right now. So Q3 and Q4 of this year. Phase 2 will be the engagement and outreach. So that's getting really underway as of the beginning of next year. The register gap analysis is scheduled for January of next year. The team will be coming forward with recommendations for designation optimization. How are other cities in the province designating? Are there ways we could perhaps be optimizing our designations in the context of Bill 23? And then the principles for prioritization. And then phase 3, there'll be the toolkits for alternate approaches. That's happening, taking us into late 2024-25, process for ongoing and monitoring, and then the final framework for prioritization coming out around that time. So that's the timeline. Next slide, please. So just want to give you a sense of, just to step back a little bit, I just wanted to say about the timeline. Just note that the work in the timeline is taking us beyond January 2025. And that's because it's important for us to remember that properties can be designated outside of development applications if they're not listed. So it's not necessarily the end of a property if it has to be removed from the register as of the end of 2024. So work will continue beyond 2025, January 2025, and the framework for prioritization that we develop as part of this project will continue to inform our priorities for us moving forward. And then now the next slide, sorry, Emma. So just a glimpse at the prioritization system, how we expect this is going to be playing out. Just a very early glimpse, as this is still being developed and we'll still be consulting on this. So on one side, you'll see that development potential model that we developed. Now we expect that once we run all the listed properties through that development potential model, we're going to find that there's more properties that have development potential than we're able or have the capacity to designate. So we're also going to be looking at non-development related factors. We really want to get the principles for this right. They may include factors like the gap analysis that's upcoming. So what's on the register, what's missing from the register, maybe landmarks, community value, geographic equity. In fact, we may hear, so this is what we're going to be our consultation on, and we may be hearing that there's factors that are even more important than development potential. We might have to adjust our framework accordingly. So expect us to go out and to be consulting on that. We're just in the early stages developing this now and expect to hear from us. Next page, please, or slide. So then just on the engagement here, this is where the stakeholder and community engagement portion of the project comes in. We're really looking forward to working with ASI and Maximum City on this part of the project. And again, this is going to be kicking off in the early part of next year. And we're planning for target stakeholder engagement with this particular board, the community preservation panels who've certainly been reaching out to us, and we certainly want to hear more from the preservation panels, the ACO Toronto and others in the heritage community, and of course those outside the traditional heritage community who we're starting to hear from as part of our survey work. We'll also be holding a technical advisory group, just like we did with the Toronto Heritage Survey, and then public outreach. So we expect to launch a public survey and potentially events as well in the new year. So thinking back to our model, when While we know we'll not be able to designate all of the listed properties, we do want to use best practice and make informed decisions about which ones we are prioritizing to make sure that the properties that we are focusing on are representative of the priorities that we're hearing in our engagement. Next slide, please. So there's a list of next steps before I wrap up today. So in the coming weeks, again, we'll be launching the city web page. So there will be a continued updated web page on this project over the next year and a half. We'll be developing draft principles for prioritization, the outreach and engagement again, early 2024. We'll be doing that gap analysis of the register. So that work that we've done on the register to date is going to put us well placed to undertake that gap analysis. And then we'll be developing and implementing that plan for properties that will not be designated, that'll be removed from the register as of 2025. Next slide, please. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide you with this update. And I look forward to continuing to work with the board on this project. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Madam Chair, I think you're on mute.
So yes, sorry, I was muted. I see you, Barbara. Where is Adam again?
If I may, Madam Chair, if you want to close out the other item, in case there are people hanging on, we do have it ready. It's at your pleasure.
Okay, let's go finish that. Then let's do this. Barbara, I know you're first. I have questions too. So let's get something cleaned up so we only have one thing open. Okay, do you want to show us the motion for, yeah. City Council amend the paragraph on page 8 of attachment 2, the report from the right, deleting the word unimportant. It says in 2005 became a place of spiritual. Okay, hold on. So looking at that, we're going to, where is it? Page. Okay, we have to go to which page? Attachment page 8.
3 of the presentation.
Okay. Okay, I want to see PV page 8, page 3 of the presentation. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Any questions? Because I have one. But you guys go first. Who wants to ask questions? Anyone? Yeah, Adam, is that a question hand or a stretching hand? Okay, any questions? I've now lost the counselor. Okay, I have a question. What this really does is updates the listing from 1950. So it's you're focused on the shrine in the amendment. I guess my question is it the only place that has spirit significance and spiritual and place of peace that is not already included in the current listing? Do you know what I'm saying? This becomes all focused on the shrine, and I thought that was one of our problems.
No, sorry, excuse me, Madam Chair, and if this is the reasons for inclusion, right? The statement of significance. So there are a number of things that are in the page, paragraph to paragraph, that are described.
Right.
They are all considered a part of the listing. What we thought the issue was just that section separated out the shrine, using the word important site, seemed to be a little bit at odds with giving some sense of higher value or different value, or that the rest of it isn't more important. So this is just a replacement for that particular couple of sentences. The rest of the listing report is intact.
Okay.
And everything that is mentioned in that report has value as described in the reasons. Is that clear?
Clear to me now. So Barbara?
I was just going to say, I think what it does is it simply states that in 2005, the shrine is there. It is an historical association to the property. It does not assign value by removing important, but it is included as a point in the listing as an association, historical association with the property. Rightfully so, considering the community input. But there's no value here. The important inserted some value. The value comes next.
Right. Is everyone else comfortable? Are there any other questions? Okay. So first of all, we have, okay, Matthew, make sure I've got this right. First, we have to approve the amendment. Then we have to approve the report, adopt the report as amended. Is that correct?
Just the one step before that is to be clear with us who is moving the amendment.
Well, that too, but.
And yes, that otherwise that's correct.
Okay.
So you would vote on the amendment.
So Barbara, you're moving the amendment?
Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor? So the amendment is adopted. Now we have to have someone to move to adopt the report as amended. Who will do that? Paul Cordingley. Okay, all in favor? Done. Adam, did you vote? I need a hand that's up or not, or down.
Yep. Is it possible to abstain on this item, Madam Chair?
No.
No? Okay, then I'll vote in favor of it.
Okay. Okay, so that's done. Okay, so now let's go back to item 10.7. Okay, so does anyone have any questions for Paul Macca on what you've just heard about Bill 23? Barbara.
I sort of lost my train of thought, but
I can't believe that.
Just a question. It's about, is this, when a property is delisted, and I know you're going to look at what you will do for properties who do not make the designation. Once it's removed, how is this 5 years? Is it considered as a factor in the audit? I guess that's what I'm asking now. Like you're looking at development considerations in the future. Is this sort of 5 years that you know you will lose a listing for a property considered a priority when you're considering the properties you will go forward for designation within the 2 years, if that makes sense?
I guess to answer that, and we're looking at development potential. What we're anticipating development potential now, and in the I guess in the immediate future, based on the amendments, the official plan, the PTSAs and the MTSAs, and all of these other factors. So from that perspective, I guess the 5-year prohibition would play in. The 5-year prohibition is only for prescribed events, though. Like, let me just clarify that. So the 5-year prohibition stops us from relisting properties.
Yes.
But we can designate properties, designate listed properties directly.
Okay.
So from that perspective, I think it's important for us to be looking at the development potential. And I think that's where the 5-year prohibition plays in.
And how far out are you looking at the development in the projections?
Well, we're looking at all of the changes that are coming into force in the official plan. So things like what's happening with the avenues, what's happening with these MTSAs and PTMSAs, they're not even in place yet. They're now under consideration by the ministry. And we're also going back 10 years with development potential. So we're looking at things, building permit applications for the last 10 years. So projecting forward with the changes that are now coming in place, part of the official plan, and then going back 10 years as to what's happening on the ground.
Okay. And to be clear, and I had forgotten this, that you, in fact, if something is missed in the designations that you're going through, and something will be, you will be able to designate. You just can't relist.
That's
correct?
correct outside the context of a prescribed event. If we have
Okay.
a prescribed event, those types of applications that come in and the property is not listed, we cannot designate.
Right.
That's why that development tool is so important to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine, Councillor?
Thank you. I want to. I've received some correspondence on an aspect of this, and I wanted to interrogate it a little bit. Prescribed events include, official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, but do not include minor variance applications. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So in the event of a minor variance application, we're not under that. We're not under that gun. We can still act and have heritage staff consider the application and make advice to the Committee of Adjustment. That's still possible.
Well, council can designate a property regardless of the Committee of Adjustment application. I could frame it that way.
Thank you. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, Jeff, you had a question. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yes, I think this is on questions, right? Not discussion.
Right.
The gap analysis. What exactly do you mean by that? The gap analysis of the register?
Well, we haven't got to that stage yet, Jeff, but I would expect that what we're doing is we're collecting as part of the work, as part of the current work program, we're collecting things like building typology, we're collecting things like date of construction, and all of this tombstone data could help us inform, first of all, what's on the register, and then perhaps what's missing from the register. So I do expect we're going to be going out to the community and asking those types of questions. So we can do a baseline based on the information we know, but then I expect we're also going to be hearing from community, from perhaps preservation panels. This is what's important to us. And since we've done that analysis of what's on the register, we can then say, yes, this is something that perhaps isn't adequately represented in our current register. So in short, the work the work program for that hasn't been fully developed yet, but that's how I would anticipate it playing out.
I mean, there's an incredible amount of work here. My thought is that it's actually a very comprehensive and integrated approach to heritage. It perhaps should have been brought in years ago, and it's only the heavy hand of the Premier and the government that's caused us to do this kind of analysis. Do you have the resources to do this?
Well, I think I would answer, Jeff, that's why we've gone out and we've engaged this team of experts, the Built Heritage team at ASI, their sub-consultants they've brought on board. We think we're in a good place to undertake this work now with the help of that consultant team. I'd also say that while we haven't had this in place previously, this work coming out of Bill 23 will inform our future work going forward beyond Bill 23 implementation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you asking something, Jeff?
Yeah, when I first saw this presentation provided to us, very concerned about the extension into 2025 of prioritization work and bringing forward properties for designation, because the deadline for designation is January 1, 2025. However, Paul, in your description, you seem to discount that. Could you explain that again as to how you think you can continue to designate in 2025 properties that have already been taken off the register by the fact that they haven't been dealt with by December 31, 2024?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd say two things. First of all, I do anticipate that we'll be designating properties before January 1st. And the work on that prioritization, those prioritization principles will help us select those properties. What we're hearing from this group and from the community preservation panels and from others will help us select those properties that will be designated for targeting for early designation. But beyond January 1st, 2025, we are still able to designate properties. We won't be able to list them if they had to be removed for the purpose for those sections under the Act, but we can go straight from designation. So we can look at approaches to monitoring those properties that are being removed from the register, the list of properties that are being removed, and this work will inform how we can do that. And then beyond that, we can still designate. Just in the context of those prescribed event applications, we cannot. So there's all sorts of other opportunities for designation.
So I have a question. So when you take properties off the register and because they've hit the expiry and they can't be put on again for 5 years, what are you going to do with those listed properties that are not a priority now because the area of the city that they're in, for example, is not under huge development pressure, but 10 years from now it may be? Will these properties automatically go back on, and what will be the process for that?
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Madam Chair. We're not far along and not far enough into the project yet for me to be able to tell you exactly how that's going to work. We anticipate that there's going to be some kind of monitoring of those properties that are coming off, and this project here will inform us as to how we could potentially be doing that. So I don't really want to speculate at this point. It's so early. Right now, we're going out to other municipalities to see how they're doing it. Like, what is Ottawa doing? They're removing properties. They're removing big batches of properties in the next little while. How is Hamilton responding? We're going to have to come up with our own City of Toronto response based on our own development pressures and our own unique situation. There are potential avenues we could use to continue to monitor those properties and figure out what to do with those properties moving forward for sure.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, Alex?
Well, the numbers continue to just boggle my mind about the impossibility of doing this properly. Considering that the rate at which we're now designating properties, if we extrapolate that, we're not going to have very many more done by the end of the year or next year. And have you considered, maybe there'll be some idea like batch designations or whatever, but have you considered getting outside consultants, just the way you do with heritage conservation districts, to do some of the research for designation?
So I'd say a couple of things to that, and I see Mary has her camera on, so I'll let her answer the second part. But the first thing I'd say is part of the project is to look for ways to optimize our designation reports. So it may be right now we have a certain capacity to designate, and looking at what other municipalities are doing and how they're responding and how they're designating, it may be that we're able to come up with ways that are more efficient. I shouldn't say efficient, ways that are more optimal to designate. And of course, we have our own context, so we can't necessarily do what other municipalities are doing, but maybe there are other things we could be doing. We do, of course, in our context, have to remember that it's very likely a lot of our applications are maybe subject to appeal, and that may not be the case in other municipalities, so we have to certainly come up with applications that are defensible. As for the designations themselves, Mary, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Through you, Madam Chair, I think the best answer is to say that nothing is off the table. I mean, right now, what we're doing is we're setting up what we hope will be a very comprehensive process, and to understand, to take a look at our register, which will then, once we have some of the feedback back from that, we'll have an understanding of how many, generally speaking, we think need to be designated more immediately, how many might be coming forward at a later time. And then we'll have to take a look at our resources. And it certainly we are not in a position now to determine whether or not we will, what sort of relationship we would have with other people. But I would definitely say nothing is off the table. So what you're suggesting could well be the case. We're just not sure yet. We're going to do everything we can to secure the resources for our resources.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay.
Oh, sorry, if I may, just a brief question.
Yep.
I've heard that some of the older reports are very difficult to locate or have been lost with various amalgamations of boards and even with the amalgamation of the City of Toronto itself. Do you anticipate that any of those earlier reports may inform designation, or is it going to be starting from scratch with a lot of those?
Sorry, to clarify, Adam, are you talking about listing reports?
Listing reports, yes. I've personally tried to access some for the Parkdale Main Street HCD, and it was like sometimes just one sentence written on a piece of paper. Other cases, they couldn't be found at all. There was some mention of the Toronto Historical Board when they moved offices. A whole lot of the reports went missing.
I can't speak to that in particular, but I will say that we do have files on all of the listed properties from the former City of Toronto.
Wonderful.
And while we may not have the staff report itself, for the most part, we have at a minimum a property information sheet for each property. And that can certainly inform these conversations. And part of this work has been us going through those files, and wherever we found gaps in the register was we're making sure that we're looking to those files and taking the information from those files and putting them in the register. So part of this project, part of the audit process for this project was to say, for instance, put the dates of construction that were in files onto the register. And now when you go to that online heritage register, you'll see all of the dates that we had in files are now on that register, and all the architects and builders are on the register. So that's part of the audit work.
Okay. And one other brief thing
Just
I have.
Adam, sorry,
Yeah.
just one other thing I want to say, just for the rest of the city. We certainly have had over the years issues about having addresses for the various properties that were on inventories prior to amalgamation. And we had already done work with the preservation panels, there's my dog, to figure out which of those were still relevant. I believe we're fairly up to date on that as well. So that was a good bit of work that we did as a precursor.
I mean, there's some amazing detailed research. I'm always blown away by the reports, but I was worried the earlier you go in the register, it seems sometimes it's harder to find the files. And also, I have a team of about 10 to 12 community historians that are itching to do research on properties at risk of Bill 23 through various local historical societies. What can I tell them? Because they have been asking me for about 6 months now, is there things that they can help with?
That's a good question, Adam. Thank you for that one. And what I would say, and I'm hearing this from other panels too, that really want to get involved. And we're certainly going to be looking to the panels and the community historians who are out there. At this point, I think we're really starting to start from the ground up and think about prioritization and prioritization principles. So if we can put some thought in the next little while into which types of properties we should be prioritizing and why we should be prioritizing them, that would be very helpful at this stage. So if they've got properties that they think are important, let's ask the question as to why they're important and see if we can't spend just a little bit of time focusing on that to help us with our priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? Okay, Jeff?
Further to that, are you planning to actually visit the community preservation panels? I think they are, as we just said, they're itching to get involved. And they're floundering at the moment in terms of not knowing how they can be best and most helpful. They really need some clear direction, I think, on that. They just want to get involved. Should they be starting research on individual properties? Should they be putting lists together of potential? They really need some direction as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jeff. Absolutely. We visited the panels in the past, and we presented to the panels to the past on this project. The panels have been integral to the desktop analysis, particularly in the former Etobicoke and Scarborough and North York and East York, and I expect we'll be going out to the panels again. I'm not quite sure on the timing of that yet, but just stay tuned.
Just,
Okay.
one last thing I just wanted to reiterate about that is we just want, and we will be doing, as Paul said, trips to the panels. We're going to do an orientation for TYCC because they've just reconstituted themselves for sure. And we understand the great value that the panels have. We would ask for continued patience while we try to get a go forward strategy. We have everybody's interests in mind. And while I certainly appreciate the passion and the energy, if you can hang on to that, there will be roles, but we need to just get our heads around this a little bit longer. And our message is very much, don't panic. We've got it. We're going to figure this out. It's a big project and we will need your help, and we'll come to you when we can best use it. So thank you very much.
Okay. Paul? You're muted, Paul. Paul?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My don't you think question was just, I think it would be really useful when you have your prioritization thoughts. That's the piece that I think the panel could really use. Because there are, if you ask them today, I mean, we've had discussions, we know what our priorities are, but you have so much good pragmatic input about some of the properties that may be near and dear to the panels may be quite reasonable to leave alone for a period of time. And your wisdom on those actual priorities would be very helpful. That may actually be a good iterative process. So anyways, that I was just going to say, would you help us with that? And that would, I think, really help.
Great.
Thank you, Paul. We'll certainly reach out with respect to the priorities.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none. Discussion among us? Seeing none. We have a report before us, which we can vote to receive. I will put forward the motion to, Counselor, are you putting it forward, the motion? Yes, what a guy. Okay. All in favor of receiving the report? Yahoo. Okay. Believe it or not, I think this concludes this meeting. And so, goodbye. And we will see each other in November. And thank you so much for staying for this longer period of time. Bye-bye.
We need a motion to adjourn?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We just go.
Okay.
Everybody pushes the little red square and off.
Your business is completed. That's the end of the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.